Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto was son of Tsunade and Jiraiya part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Today was the 15th of the 8th month of the year, as well as the Grand Tsukimi festival. The streets of Tanzukugai were swarmed with people, ranging from the locals to tourists from all over the world. Various stands of entertainment were spread across the streets. These included lantern riddle games, 7-needle loops, and for the children it had candle stands, apple bobbing and scooping goldfish. Fully bloomed sakura trees acted as a decoration amongst the view. In the midst of the lively city of Tanzukugai, there was a fairly ordinary bar. It had dark brown colored walls with several Japanese-style paintings hung upon it. The seating of the bar was designed to be circular, and at an eagle's eye view the seating would resemble a whirlpool. The main bar was located furthest from the main entrance. All front bar the seats were filled with various people, young couples, groups of friends, and particularly a couple of lifelong comrades and friends. The two people had somber expressions on their faces, unfitting to the festive atmosphere of the night. The one sitting on the left was a woman, one that would often turn the heads of many males with her great beauty. This woman had blonde hair which was tied into a long ponytail that reached down to her lower hip with chin-length strands framing both sides of her face, a diamond-shaped mark on her forehead, and had brown eyes. She was about 5'4", wore a green robe with a kanji for gamble on it. Underneath her robe she wore a white-sleeved shirt along with black short pants with a matching waist sash. But her most prominent feature was her extremely large breasts. The person sitting beside her was a man with very distinguished features. He had waist-length spiky white hair tied into a ponytail, with 2 shoulder-length bangs that framed both sides of his face, red lines that ran down from his eyes, and a unique head protector with the kanji of oil printed across the metallic object upon his forehead. He was a fairly tall man, about 6'4". He wore a gray kimono under a long red vest. His pants were full length that shared a similar color to his shirt. He also wore a pair of traditional Japanese clogs. The people of the bar were none the wiser when 2 of the most powerful shinobi that have ever been produced in the shinobi world was within arm's reach of them. They were Jiraiya the Gama Sanin, and Konoha no Namakuji Tsunade. It was only a few days after the Third Shinobi World War, and the Sandaime Hokage had allowed his 2 students to leave the village for a brief vacation. The 2 sanin had been 2 of the most powerful shinobi in the war, and there were countless lives on their hands. And even lifelong veterans like Jiraiya and Tsunade need some quiet repentance. The Third Great War is finally finished. It's hard to believe, isn't it? Half-asked a flustered Tsunade. Hi, this is the Second Shinobi World War we've been through, said Jiraiya while sipping on his sake. I know a lot of Leaf Shinobi has died in the war, but I am glad that no one particularly close to us have perished. Silence was the only response Jiraiya got back. He knew he shouldn't have said that to his teammate. She had lost too much to wars already. Tsunade had changed a lot since she was a genin. The happy and exuberant girl she was then had all since vanished, and only a shell of her former self remained. The Senju had much more power than she did back then, but it came at the cost of the majority of her soul. She no longer had the will of fire that her clan valued above all others. Jiraiya looked around and saw many happy faces around them. He knew that most of them were just normal civilians around the world, but even they were glad that the war was finally over. In the last 10 years the war had rendered the economy of the world to plunder to the ground. But with the end of the violence the people of the world can finally breathe a sigh of relief and see a glimmer of hope. The people around his sure look happy. The end of the war could be one of the best things to ever happen to them, said the powerful sanin as he sipped on his saucer of sake. Tsunade nodded absent-mindedly with a flushed face. She had already drank 3 bottles of sake. Why wouldn't they be? The world is finally at peace, and they could make money again, said the woman with a flat voice. The white-haired man sighed and looked over at the teammate. Let's go join the festival. It is very seldom that we get to see the moon like this, said Jiraiya as he led Tsunade to a good moon-gazing spot. Tanzukugai Castle Roof. Did you know that in a faraway land in the west, women celebrate this moon as a tribute for the man they love, stated Jiraiya as he kept his gaze on the full moon. The men will praise and recite poems for the woman they loved, comparing their beauties to that of the moon. Jiraiya continued as Tsunade tore her gaze from the moon as she turned to look at her lifelong teammate. And that was something I always wanted to do. Then why didn't you? You're the gallant Jiraiya, remember? Asked Tsunade with an amused smirk. After the Second Shinobi World War you should have had girls falling all over you. Jiraiya had a soft smile on his face. Yeah, that was the case, said the man with a less than sarcastic voice that surprised Tsunade. But I never had any sort of feelings for those women. They were all beautiful but they just weren't for me, whispered the man as he closed his eyes and breathed out a long sigh. There had always been only one woman in my life, and as long as she is in my heart I can never love another woman, said the sanin as he opened his eyes and looked over at Tsunade. I Jiraiya stuttered a flushed Tsunade, partly from the alcohol, and the rest from the heartfelt words of Jiraiya. I met her many years ago, and my feelings for her had started since then, continued Jiraiya as he ignored his teammate's voice. She was a very unique girl, angry and violent in 1 minute, sweet and loving in another. She was the reason I actually wanted to get hurt or injured on missions back then. Her face and actions during her healing me always made me feel cared and loved. Chuckled Jiraiya as he spoke, amused by his own words. There was just something about her eyes, they were so full of life and compassion, they made me feel that she could do anything she wanted to do. I was sure that she would be the most successful medical ninja in Konoha, and I was right. Tsunade was entirely focused on Jiraiya's words. She never knew he felt so intensely of her. She had always known that her teammate liked her, but she thought it had ended many years ago. The Senju heiress had never heard Jiraiya speak with such emotion in his voice. It really made him reflect an image of a sanin, and not just a common pervert. Jiraiya looked over at his lifelong love. I was very happy that she could be so successful, but over time I watched her get knocked down repeatedly emotionally, and the girl I loved began to change. The white-haired man knew Tsunade knew he was talking about her. The light in her eyes started to dim, and she grew distant from me. I didn't know what to do. I tried my best to comfort her, but she always pushed her away. There was nothing I could do. Tears rolled down Tsunade's face as she closed her eyes. She felt guilty about treating Jiraiya like she always had. It was like she had failed him. Jiraiya carefully moved closer to Tsunade, until their faces were mere inches from each other, and he put both his hands on her shoulders. The first time I met you was at our team meeting. I still remember that you were wearing that cute turquoise kimono, and how you used to tie your hair back in a high ponytail. A soft smile graced the woman's face as she heard Jiraiya clear memory of her. That was the Tsunade I fell in love with, the happy and fun-loving Senju heiress that liked to fight with me. Tsunade started to move closer to Jiraiya as she dragged on to his every word. After I obtained the contract for the toads, I was really happy, because I thought I could have impressed you with my power, but that never happened. Whispered the man with a little sadness in his voice. But I didn't give up. I spent the next few years traveling around the world, and it was some of the most important and happiest time of my life. I got much stronger and wiser through those travels, said the man as he looked into Tsunade's eyes. But leaving Konoha at the time is the one thing I regret the most in my life, Jiraiya said with a sudden anger that surprised Tsunade. It was during the time I was away you started to date Dan. If I was not to leave, we might have had a chance. Jiraiya muttered. Tsunade with difficulty. She never even suspected that Jiraiya would feel that way. Tsunade, I know that this may not the best time, but this is something I have to say, spoke Jiraiya with conviction as he once again stared intently into Tsunade's eyes. Tsunade, I love you. There is nothing more I can say with words other than that. I know that you may not even remotely think of me like that, but Jiraiya was abruptly cut off when Tsunade smashed her lips upon his, effectively shutting Jiraiya's brain down. Jiraiya was knocked out of his stunned state when he felt Tsunade's tongue enter and began to explore his mouth as his eyes widened. Stunned and in denial, Jiraiya slowly returned the kiss, making the both of them moan in the process. After a full 5 minutes, the two reluctantly pull away from each other, a link of saliva connecting their lips. Jiraiya, don't speak anymore, whispered the woman close to her teammate's face with tears welling in her eyes. Her whole body was shaking and her heart was breaking down. Please, this is enough. The white-haired man ran his fingers delicately through his love's hair. Why are you still hiding from me? Asked Jiraiya tenderly. You know I will do anything for you, said the man as he pulled the love of his life close to him and let her rest against the crook of his neck. You can stop with your cold and apathetic act in front of me. I will let you know up front that I will never give up on you. You mean too much for me, Tsunade. Tears flowed freely down Tsunade's eyes as she tightened her grip around a part of Jiraiya's shirt. I am so sorry. Jiraiya sighed and wrapped his arms tighter around her. I almost died during this war. It was when my troops and I were attacking one of the largest camps of Uzuakure, and just before I managed to kill the leader of the group, I thought I was going to die, whispered the sanin softly as he felt the woman in his arms flinch at his words. The man was not particularly powerful, but most of my men were down, and I was outnumbered 100 to 1. Jiraiya paused to snuggle deeper against Tsunade. I laid motionlessly on the ground around hundreds of dead men, barely conscious myself, and the only thing I could think of at the time was you, Tsunade. Tsunade wrapped her arms around Jiraiya's frame. There was a very peculiar feeling in her heart that she had spent the last 5 years to hide from. The Senju promised herself that she will never feel the pain of losing someone close to her again, and in order to do so, she pushed everyone close to her out of her heart, including Jiraiya. But the man's words had thawed his way back into her heart, and the thought of losing Jiraiya to the war was almost unbearable. Jiraiya closed his eyes and felt content with the warmth Tsunade provided for him. I felt like a failure. I was praised by the village was one of the most powerful shinobi to ever live, but I couldn't even make the woman I love happy, whispered the man close to the woman's ear. I promised myself that I will do my best to stay with you after the war. I know you are trying to break all your bonds with people close around you so you don't have to hurt again, but I promise you, Tsunade, if you let me in again, I will always be with you no matter what. Nothing will take me away from you. Tsunade lifted her head from the crook of Jiraiya's neck and stared at the man that had loved her for over 2 decades. Jiraiya muttered, the woman as soft as the wind surrounding them. There was nothing she could say. She had no idea what could she possibly say. In just a few minutes, her view of Jiraiya had changed drastically. He was no longer the perverted goof in her eyes, he became her most precious person. The senju could believe the amount of affection she was feeling for Jiraiya at the moment. It was to the point where she couldn't tell if she was in love with him, or if her entirely was dependent on him. The white-haired sanin sighed and just pulled her back against him. You don't have to say anything, just know that you will never be alone, and you don't have to be lonely all the time. I will always be here with you by your side supporting you. The blonde woman suddenly pushed herself up from Jiraiya's body until she was looking down upon his face. Jiraiya whispered the senju with her eyes still filled with tears. I love you too. Tsunade leaned down and kissed Jiraiya again. But this time, instead the kiss being filled with desperation, it was filled with affection and love. The woman straddled her teammate's lap and wrapped her arms behind his neck, pulling him deeper into the kiss. Fireworks were igniting in the sky as two of the sanin committed their lives to each other. The festival and the war were knocked out of their minds as they totally engrossed themselves into each other. Both of them were acting on instinct, being too shocked and exhilarated to react rationally, and the drive behind their love was increasing dramatically, after already been waiting for over 20 years. The past week had been the happiest week of Jiraiya's life. He has been spending every minute of every day with the woman of his dreams, and the fact that Tsunade seemed very happy when she was with him made it all the better. They had spent the week after they confessed to each other staying at Tanzakagai. The festival may have ended, but to Jiraiya and Tsunade it was heaven. During the sunset of Tanzakagai, the orange glow of the sun paints over the village, illuminating the light-colored walls of the buildings. Sakura petals sails through the sky as if it was following the melody of the wind. Once again atop of the castle roof was the lovely new couple. The two were entangled with each other. Jiraiya had his arms wrapped protectively around Tsunade's waist, and his chin resting on her head as she snuggled her face deeper into the crook of his neck. Shifting his gaze from the beautiful view, he turned his head down to stare at what he considers an even more beautiful view. Tsunade was bathing in the orange sunlight. Her eyes were brimming with life and hope that had been scarce for a long time. What are you staring at, Jiraiya-kun? Whispered Tsunade, breaking Jiraiya out of his stupor. Jiraiya smiled at his soulmate as he answered, just wondering how my stupid drunken confession managed to make the most beautiful woman in the world to fall in love with me. Tsunade closed her eyes and snuggled further into Jiraiya's warmth. Your words meant a lot to me. It was as you said, after Dan and Iwaki died I began to lock myself away from the world, ignoring most of my friends, and because of this I lost contact with most of them. Whispered the woman softly. I wanted that to happen because if they were to die in the war, I would just be in pain again. I was so engrossed in that idea, I failed to see that you never gave up on me or left me, said Tsunade with a smile on her face. Jiraiya's eyes were glued onto Tsunade as she spoke. It was you that was with me when Grandpa and Granduncle died. It was you that comforted me when Iwaki died. It was you who stayed with me for days on end when Dan died. Jiraiya slowly stroked her hair lovingly as she continued. I had already given up on loving another. I thought it was too late for me, but your words showed me that I was not alone. You never left me, you were always there. Now I can truly see clearly, and can say without a shred of doubt that I love you, Jiraiya. Finished Tsunade with stray tears flowing freely down her smiling face, as she leaned upwards to kiss Jiraiya lovingly on the lips. Jiraiya was stunned at the very least. His obvious feelings were happiness and love, now fully accepting the fact that Tsunade loves him and the impact of his confession. What emotion Jiraiya felt that really surprised him was the feeling of intense relief. Tsunade has recognized him and the things he had done for her. It was not in vain, thought the man silently as one lone tear slid down his cheek. He quickly responded to the kiss, and as if a dam erupted, all the passion and want built up inside him for years was spilled into the kiss. What started out to be a loving kiss quickly turned into a passionate make-out session. It was as if both of them were trying desperately to make up for lost time. Jiraiya forced his tongue into Tsunade's mouth, aggressively brushing his tongue against hers, making Tsunade moan into the kiss as she tangled her fingers into the white locks of the man she loves. Removing his tongue from her mouth, Jiraiya lightly sucked on her lower lips, savoring the taste of the pair of lips he had wanted to kiss for many years. Tsunade removed her hands from Jiraiya's hair and proceeded to rub from his wide shoulders, then down towards his muscular chest, causing him to shudder at her delicacy. Taking this as a sign to continue, Jiraiya continued to kiss Tsunade as he gently laid Tsunade onto her back, and proceeded to rub her belly and waist sensually. But that was the limit Jiraiya had set for himself. He may be a prevent, but he did not want to jeopardize the most important relationship in his life. Tsunade saw his hesitation, decided to take over. She lightly lifted Jiraiya's hand off her belly and laid it on top of her wonderful breast. The Senja heiress almost giggled out loud when she saw Jiraiya's reaction to what she did. His eyes almost popped out of his head. To say Jiraiya was surprised would be an understatement. The woman he had been in love with for the past 20 years just pushed him to second base. Tsunade, if you continue this I will not be able to control myself, grounded out Jiraiya, desperately trying not to move his hand. Tsunade led it up closer to his ear and whispered huskily, Jiraiya, I want you, I need you. Tsunade then proceeded to suck on his earlobe, pushing Jiraiya over the edge. Jiraiya tilted himself so he was fully atop of Tsunade, ready to proceed, but before he could continue, Tsunade stopped him. I want this, but can we please go back to our hotel room first? Said a flushed Tsunade with rapid breathing. Jiraiya smiled as he lifted his soon-to-be lover up bridal style, Anything for you, Tsuhime. Besides, I have fantasized about carrying you to bed for a long time. It was a beautiful morning, the sky was a clear blue, the birds were singing, and the town was just beginning to wake up. Just when the clock hit 9 o'clock, sunlight began to seep through the curtain of the hotel. The rays of light land on the lovely sleeping face of Tsunade, illuminating the face that showed only expressions of happiness and fulfillment. Her eyelids started to twitch and twitch, until one of them opened to catch a glimpse of the man she wanted to wake up to for the rest of her life. Jiraiya was still asleep. A small smile delicately graced his face. The sunlight was shining on his hair, causing it to look as if it was glowing. His arms were wrapped tightly around her body with her head on his chest. I never thought I would see him like this just 1 week ago. All I would have seen from this man was an obnoxious pervert with his signature perverted grin, but now I can only see a handsome gentleman that loves me unconditionally, a man that can really bring out the good in me. It was true, Tsunade no longer felt the urge to gamble anymore. She had passed by multiple casinos throughout the week, but she didn't even pay it a thought. She was always too engrossed by whatever she and Jiraiya were either doing or talking about. Tsunade was not the only one who had changed. Jiraiya had not made one perverted comment about any other women except for her. The Tsunade a week ago would have beat Jiraiya to a pulp because of his perverted words to her, but after that confession night, she loved it whenever Jiraiya would compliment her body. A slight twitch from Jiraiya's body woke Tsunade from her deep thoughts. Looking up and seeing that Jiraiya was about to wake up, Tsunade leaned up and planted a soft kiss on his lips. Slowly but surely, she felt Jiraiya return the kiss as he began to nibble on her lower lips. Instinctively parting her lips, she allowed Jiraiya's tongue to sensually explore her mouth. "Can I expect a wake-up call like that every morning, Tsuhime?" said Jiraiya with a smile as he fully woke up. "Only if you are good, Jiraiya-kun," replied an amused Tsunade with a giggle. "Oh, I will be good. Last night was the best night of my life. It was literally a dream come true," said Jiraiya as he pecked Tsunade on the lips. "Well, then you better expect a lot more dreams coming true," huskily said Tsunade. "Oh, this I can work with, hee, perversely replied Jiraiya as he closed in for a kiss. Ting, ting, ting. The couple was interrupted when something hit their glass window. Looking over, they found that it was 2 messenger birds tapping their beaks on the window. Jiraiya reluctantly pulled away with a sigh and walked towards the window to receive the messages. "It seems Sarutobi-sensei have a message for both of us," said Jiraiya as he read his own message while passing the other to Tsunade. "It seems that he wants us back at Konoha," stated Tsunade as she continued to read. "Wow, expected arrival in 2 days, what's the hurry? It does make sense. We have been gone for almost 2 weeks. Konoha needs more intimidating shinobi to prevent other villages from attacking during the village is vulnerable," calmly replied Jiraiya. "Well, we do have good news to bring to Sarutobi-sensei. He would be ecstatic that we are together," chirped a happy Tsunade. She knew that her sensei always wanted her to get together with Jiraiya, even before she was even together with Dan. "Yep, I bet even Orochimaru will be happy for us," agreed a happy Jiraiya, silently hoping that his news will cheer up his best friend a little, as Orochimaru has been acting very strange lately. "Yosh, let pack and head home," said Jiraiya with a Cheshire grin, making Tsunade giggle at her lover. Tsunade and Jiraiya were walking hand in hand through the Konoha forest, finally heading back to their home. A small smile graced their faces as they strolled down the road in a comfortable silence. Both of them haven't felt so peaceful in a long while. Whenever they were in this forest, it was usually to depart for a mission, but today the atmosphere has completely changed. It was a wonder to them that they have never seen how grand and healthy the trees around Konoha was compared to the rest of the places they have been. "It feels good to be back home," said Jiraiya in a relaxed tone, whispered the man while he hugged Tsunade close to him with one arm. "Home," mumbled Tsunade as she stared at the direction of Konoha. She shifted her gaze to her new love and smiled. "Yes, it is home again," finished Tsunade as she leaned into Jiraiya's arms. The pair soon reached the giant gates of Konoha. As they stepped throughout the gates, they surprised the gatekeepers by their affectionate posture. Jiraiya and Tsunade then walked up to the gatekeepers with smiles on their faces. It was no surprise to them that the people of the village will react quite surprised about their new relationship, including the simple Chunin guards. "Namikaze Jiraiya and Senju Tsunade reporting back from 2-week holiday," said Jiraiya in a professional tone as he handed them their passports and ID. The 2 guards became nervous upon seeing 2 of the most powerful shinobi in Konoha up close. "Hi Jiraiya-sama, Tsunade-sama," stuttered out the young man, fumbling a bit as he checked the passport's authenticity. "Okay, everything is clear. Welcome home, Jiraiya-sama, Tsunade-sama." "Thank you," said a happy Tsunade as she took her identification back from the Chunin. The new couple were heading towards the Hokage tower, still walking with their arms entangled. They attracted the attention of every person that passed them by. This was something the new couple have expected when they decided to not hide their relationship to anyone. It was not every day when you see 2 of the sanin acting so affectionate with each other. Though many of the shinobi that passed by the lovely couple were not only surprised that the 2 were apparently an item, but also at the happiness displayed by Tsunade. They were used to scowl, permanently encased on the female sanin's face, which was replaced with a large smile on her face, and eyes full of life. It was true, Tsunade's expression was one that resembled a soon-to-be bride. In the past years Tsunade have not paid much attention to the village or its citizens. Now that she can see, she is very happy at how lively and happy the village is. She is also silently thankful that her grandfather's and granduncle's pride and joy had such prosperity. I know you both are very happy in heaven, Grandpa, Granduncle, thought the sanin silently as she looked up at the Hokage monument. Jiraiya was also having a great time. He was walking down the street. His face was filled with pride and joy as he held the most beautiful woman in Konoha in his arms. Some might even think that he was showing off. Jiraiya was enjoying the looks of surprise and jealousy that various men sent towards him, so much so that he even failed to see how happy the village was after the war. For the longest time, the streets of Konoha were mostly bare because of the villagers' fear of sudden attacks on the village, but just a few weeks after the war, the streets were filled with laughter and happiness. The village is really lively, isn't it? Said Tsunade with a glad smile. Yeah, although it might seem extra lively in our eyes, smugly replied Jiraiya, obviously proud of their happiness, making Tsunade giggle in response. The pair soon made it to the Hokage tower, and after trekking up the stairs, they entered the building and headed towards the receptionist. The Hokage's receptionist had been working her position for a very long time. She was a woman with natural beauty that was in her early 40s. Dressed in a formal pantsuit, her long brown hair trailing down to her mid-back, with one bang covering one side of her forehead. Her name was Rina Hikari, and a smile came on her face when she looked up and saw Jiraiya and Tsunade. Hello Hikari, how are you today? Asked Tsunade with a smile. The sanin and Hikari leads way back, as they had to visit the Hokage tower very often when they were younger as their sensei was Hokage. The three members of Team Sarutobi made quick friends with Hikari, or for Orochimaru, an acquaintance. Oh, welcome home, I had a very good morning, and it seems that you are having a blast too, Tsunade, and Jiraiya looks aesthetic, said a smirking Hikari as she eyeballed the position her two friends are in. A tiny tint of red appeared on Tsunade's face as she happily replied, yes, we are a couple now, said the blonde woman, making Hikari squeal and Jiraiya to rub the back of his head sheepishly. Oh my Kami, I knew you two would get together, I always thought you two would make a cute couple, cried an excited Hikari as she clapped her hands together. Jiraiya chuckled. Thank you Hikari-chan, humbly said the male sanin. But getting back on topic, I believe sensei wanted to see us. He gave us quite a rush to get back to the village. The smile was suddenly gone from Hikari's face. Yes, Hokage-sama needs to see both of you for some disturbing news, said Hikari with a serious and somber tone, surprising the other two as Hikari was very rarely like this. Jiraiya just nodded, and led Tsunade to the Hokage office. Hokage office. Sarutobi Hiruzen was known as the Kami no Shinobi, one of the most powerful shinobi to ever live and was considered the strongest Kage of his generation. He was a shinobi that had been through 3 shinobi world wars, and had killed multiple high-class shinobi without batting an eyelash, but the legendary man was now extremely ashamed of himself. 3 days ago, Sarutobi and the Jonin Council had been investigating a case that consisted of many children being kidnapped. He Hokage being afraid that it was other villages taking their potential future shinobi, the case was classified as an S-ranked mission. After they members involved in the mission followed the evidence to a hidden chamber within Konoha Academy, the cause was revealed. The Hibi-sanin of Konoha, Orochimaru, was the kidnapper. He was using the children to conduct gene splicing experiments, and that was not all the evidence suggested. They also showed that over the years, Orochimaru had been kidnapping his fellow Konoha shinobi and used them as human guinea pigs. He experimented on them hoping to develop techniques that would grant him immortality. Sarutobi was ashamed for 2 reasons. One was that he had trained Orochimaru since he was a child, and the man he turned out to be was partially his fault. Second, when the many disappearances were finally traced to Orochimaru, Hiruzen knew that it was his duty to kill him. But at the time, Hiruzen was unable to bring himself to kill his prized student for whom he had such high hopes for. Why am I so weak? I fully knew the implications of being Hokage. The safety of the village comes before everything. And now I may have unleashed a catastrophe into the world. I am so sorry, sensei, depressingly thought Sarutobi, as he looked up at his teacher's Hokage pictures. Sarutobi was taken out of his stupor when he heard someone knock on his office door. Come in, said Sarutobi with a commanding voice. Sarutobi's face has lightened up considerably when he saw who was at the door. His facial expression quickly changed to one of great surprise and happiness when he saw his 2 other students walk into the room with their arms entangled with each other. There were bright smiles on their faces as they looked over at their sensei. Hello Sarutobi-sensei, how are you this fine morning? Pleasantly asked Jiraiya. Jiraiya, are you and Tsunade? Stammered the anxious sensei. Yep, I finally got the her. Happily exclaimed Jiraiya with a true smile. Tsunade hugged Jiraiya closer and kissed him on the cheek, proving Jiraiya's claim. Sarutobi happily walked over to his students and gave them a warm hug. I am very happy for you both, you definitely deserve each other, and I haven't seen you smile like that in a long time, Tsunade-chan, noted the sandame, very glad that his surrogate daughter was happy again. I knew you would eventually manage to woo her, Jiraiya, continued Sarutobi, earning him a cheeky grin from Jiraiya. Hee hee, thank you sensei, but let's get back to the point. I believe that you wanted to see us because something bad happened when we were gone," asked Jiraiya seriously. With a sigh, Sarutobi sat back down at his desk, gesturing Jiraiya and Tsunade to sit down with him. "About 10 days ago, me and a Jounin team set up by the Jounin Corps was investigating an S-ranked mission," started the Hokage with a somber tone. "Someone was kidnapping children from various families and orphanages of Konoha. The missing numbered at 100, explained the Sandame, shocking his audience. The further we went into the case, the more information was found. The graves of several bloodline users were raided, their corpses were missing some of their bones, all of which, when done correctly, DNA could be extracted from it. The evidence eventually led us to a hidden lab near the academy, and when we got inside we found numerous scrolls containing kinjutsu of all kinds. Jiraiya and Tsunade were becoming more disturbed and engrossed by the sudden information. We also found that not only children were used to perform these experiments, multiple shinobi from Konoha that was apparently Kia was also being tested," further said Sarutobi as Tsunade gasped and Jiraiya to grind his teeth in anger. "From all the evidence, we have deduced that the person behind these acts is a Konoha shinobi," said Sarutobi with a hardened expression, making his two students shake in anxiety. "Only one man was in all the missions. Those ninja we thought were Kia. He is your sibling disciple, Orochimaru." "What?" exclaimed Tsunade, obviously shocked by the turn of events. Even though she always thought of Orochimaru as a twisted and sadistic man, but she never thought that he would be able to sacrifice his own comrades and fellow ninja in order to achieve the impossibility he calls his ambition. Her thoughts and eyes quickly shifted to Jiraiya. She knew how much the friendship of Orochimaru mattered to him. They were best friends and the greatest of rivals. Jiraiya had on an expressionless face, staring intently into his sensei's eyes. "What evidence did you have, besides that he was on all those missions?" asked an emotionless Jiraiya. "Jiraiya, we had caught him at the scene of the crime. He himself admitted that he had done all those horrific acts, and he attacked the Jounin team and killed all of them. Then why did you let him escape? I know that Orochimaru is strong, but I know that you could have defeated him. You let him get away," accused Jiraiya, making Tsunade look at both of them. The Sandame lowered his head in shame. "Yes, I couldn't bring myself to kill him." "Jiraiya-kun," gently muttered Tsunade. Jiraiya turned around and walked out the door, not sparing a glance at Sarutobi or Tsunade. Tsunade rushed to the door to catch up, but Jiraiya was already gone. Jiraiya was standing in the middle of an destroyed training field 9. The trees were either snapped in half or were incinerated to the core. Ash and debris were scattered throughout the area. Almost the entire training ground was covered in large craters 5 feet deep each. Such destruction had alerted many ninja and ANBU Black Ops, but when each of them arrived at Training Field 9, they were not brave enough to stop Jiraiya, as no one wanted to deal with an angry sanin after what Orochimaru did just a few days prior. Also within the crowd were some ninja that knew Jiraiya very well. Most of them were older and had higher-ranking ninja that had the opportunity to work with the sanin before. Among the few was Hotake Kakashi, a young student and adopted son of Jiraiya. Similar to his surrogate father, he had spiky white, gravity-defying hair. He was wearing standard ANBU Black Ops uniform that was shrunk down so it can fit his 14-year-old body. The majority of his face is covered by a black face mask and a slanted Konoha Hitai that covered his left eye. Many had been surprised when Jiraiya of the Sanin adopted the son of the White Fang. The reason was what happened 8 years ago. Hitaki Tsukumo was a close friend of Jiraiya's before he died. They were around the same age, and they often trained together and drank together. Tsukumo was the one man that Jiraiya can count on to be watching his back during the Second Shinobi World War, even more so than his now traitorous teammate Orochimaru. When Tsukumo committed suicide, it pained Jiraiya a lot, but he did see the man's point of view. It was the only way for Tsukumo to keep his honor and respect for himself, his comrades, and his village. Kakashi was only 6 years old at the time. Despite already being a chunin, it would hurt a boy of his age if he was to lose his father. Jiraiya knew the boy would need a family, a role model, so he officially adopted Kakashi as his son a few weeks after the death of the White Fang. At first Kakashi did not accept him as a father, or accept anyone for that matter. Kakashi locked himself in isolation, ignoring everybody, trained 24/7, and on missions he would perform exactly as the official ninja code dictates. Eventually Jiraiya managed to get his adopted son to open up a bit, sometimes having decent conversations with each other, but most of the time Kakashi only wanted to ask advice on how to become stronger. Kakashi was then put on Jiraiya's team when he was 13, he was just promoted to Jounin at the time. Their mission in the war was to fend off the Kanobi Bridge, one area that was crucial for the war. The team consisted of Namikaze Jiraiya, Hitaki Kakashi, Rin, and Uchiha Obito, with Jiraiya and Kakashi being Jonin, Obito and Rin both being Chunin. See that the boy was just made Jounin, and was in need of experience. Jiraiya allowed him to take leadership of the team until they needed to split up. That day Kakashi demonstrated to the group his original assassination ninjutsu, Chidori. It was an immensely powerful A-rank right-hand jutsu. By focusing lighting natured chakra into the palm of his hand, then using shape manipulation to alter the chakra into multiple electric bursts, Then lastly, the user needs to time the bursts of electricity with a burst of speed to create a highly charged lighting jab at a target. Unfortunately, such a jutsu has its own share of flaws. First, the jutsu must be used as a burst of speed, thus, it can only travel in a straight line in order to maintain its momentum. Second, the burst of speed is charged by lightning, causing the jutsu to be so fast it is hard to react to multiple enemies after it hits one target, or it misses. Jiraiya knew that against a skilled and experienced shinobi, they could catch the flaw of the jutsu before Kakashi can employ his act. Warning Kakashi of the flaws of using that jutsu, then Jiraiya had to split his team in two. He himself must go to the rendezvous point, where the main IWA forces are, and the rest of his team must continue forward aiming to cut off the enemy's food supply. In the end, the mission was a success, but to all the members of Team Jiraiya, the price was too great. Obito had sacrificed his life in order to save Kakashi, and Rin even gave Kakashi his left Sharingan to replace Kakashi's damaged left eye. As much as Jiraiya hates to say it, Obito's death did have some value other than saving his comrades. His death had changed Kakashi for the better. The mission had shown Kakashi that his father was right, and was still the man he thought of him before he died. After that, Kakashi had become much more sociable. He had opened up to people, especially Jiraiya. One night the father and son were talking, and Jiraiya eased up on the topic of Tsukumo. Instead of being reluctant to talk about his biological father, Kakashi expressed his true feelings to Jiraiya, even going as far as cry on his shoulder. That night was the first time Jiraiya saw Kakashi act his age, as well as the first and only time Kakashi called him Tsunade. Kakashi was standing on a tree branch located on the edge of Training Ground 9. He was felt tremors throughout the village and wanted to find out what the cause of it was. He sure did not expect his adopted father acting like a crazed man, obliterating the training field. This deeply worried Kakashi. His adopted father, despite being a prevert, was a usually calm and collected man, and for him to act like this, something big and bad must have happened, and he had a pretty good assumption of what it is. Jiraiya, you have to calm down soon, the villagers are already in distress, thought the young ANBU member silently to himself. All the present ninjas sensed two strong chakra signatures approaching, and they all turned over to see that the Sandaime Hokage and Tsunade of the sanin were arriving. All attention were drawn to the village leader and the female sanin as the two approached the group of shinobi. Kakashi-kun, is that Jiraiya down there? Asked the aged Kage. Hi, Hokage-sama, I take it that he just heard of what Orochimaru has done. Yes, said the Hokage exasperated. Sarutobi sensed that there were at least 50 shinobi in the area. He decided that they needed some privacy. Everyone here except Kakashi shall clear out of this area immediately, cried Sarutobi with authority. Waiting until all the people has left, the trio jumped down to the destroyed area to approach Jiraiya. Jiraiya had his back facing the three and was breathing heavily, showing signs of sweating. Tsunade slowly walked up to him and put her hand gently on his shoulder. Jiraiya-kun, please calm down. How can I calm down? Yelled Jiraiya, now facing Tsunade. He was a Konoha shinobi. He was supposed to be loyal to the village, not kill its shinobi and desecrate the graves of our heroes, cried the man with untamed anger in his eyes. Tsunade stood at the same position, unmoving and silent. Slowly some tears leaked out of her eyes and strolled down her face. Tsunade was a strong woman. She had seen and experienced her own share of cruelty and anger, but she couldn't stand to watch Jiraiya act the way he was. It scared her. She was afraid that she might have lost the man she loves once again. Once Jiraiya saw Tsunade's tears, he immediately regretted his tone and quickly turned to embrace her. I am so sorry, Haim. I didn't mean to yell at you. I just feel so betrayed and angry. I saw. Jiraiya's apology was cut off when Tsunade covered his lips with her own. The Sandaime and Kakashi stood at the side, not daring to interrupt the two, although Kakashi was quite surprised at the scene, as he did not know of the two's new relationship. Don't apologize, Yubaka, I understand your feelings. I also feel betrayed and angry at Orochimaru, but we can't choose the proper action to take if we don't calm down first, said Tsunade softly as she stroked his hair. Jiraiya shifted his gaze from Tsunade to the two others standing near him. He was never really mad at his sensei. He knew that it was hard to kill someone you considered family no matter what they did, but at the time he was disappointed at his sensei for letting Orochimaru go without doing anything. Then finally Jiraiya took notice of his adopted son looking at him with a worried gaze. The man was even more disappointed at himself at the sight of his son. He hated whenever he worried the people that he was supposed to take care of. Despite his personality, Jiraiya loved kids and being a father. He really cherished his relationship with Kakashi, and he didn't want Kakashi to be worried of another one of his father. Also, this situation also reminded him about the 3 orphans he took care of in AIM, Yahiko, Konan, and Nagato. If he had stayed with them longer, or have trained them harder, they might not have died. Jiraiya had always blamed it on himself somewhat, and he will be damned before he fails Kakashi. Kakashi started Jiraiya, not knowing what to say. Are you okay, Jiraiya? I have never seen you act like this, asked the worried son softly. Yes, I am fine now, Kakashi. I am sorry that you had to see me like that, answered Jiraiya with a sad smile as he ruffled Kakashi's hair. It's okay, Jiraiya. I am just glad you are okay, gladly said Kakashi with an eye smile. Sarutobi walked towards Jiraiya and offered him a bow, shocking all in the process. Sensei, I am sorry of what I said, please don't bow. No Jiraiya, I am sorry. As Hokage it was my job to at least try to stop him. I was too weak emotionally at the moment, apologized Sarutobi as he lowered his head further in shame. It's okay sensei, Jiraiya said as he walked over to his sensei and lifted him from the bow. Tsunade and Kakashi smiled at the two, happy that things have calmed down a bit. The Sandaime gave Jiraiya and Tsunade the rest of the day off, and said that they will continue on the subject of Orochimaru the next day. Kakashi went back to NBU HQ to give his superior a report on his latest mission, but he said that he will be home in a few hours. Both Jiraiya and Tsunade were having their own thoughts as they walked down the main road as they were headed back to Jiraiya's apartment. They both decided prior to arriving in the village that they will stay there, as it had plenty of space for the two of them. Besides, the Senju clan house was too big for the two of them. Tsunade was very glad that they got some time to level their heads and analyze the situation on their own before discussing what to do tomorrow. This was their first day back in the village. It was merely 5 hours since they passed through the village main gate, but it felt like they'd been here for days already. The pressure of the new developments was almost unbearable. Jiraiya was still having a hard time digesting the fact that Orochimaru betrayed the village. He always knew Orochimaru had an unhealthy obsession towards immortality, but he thought Orochimaru would just give up one day, when he finally acknowledged that it was impossible. Jiraiya had never thought that Orochimaru would go to such extreme extent to fulfill his sick ambition. Killing fellow Konoha shinobi is already unforgivable, but to deform their bodies and kidnap their children were just acts against nature. Jiraiya knew that he should not have doubt about whether or not Orochimaru was really so twisted, but it was just so hard to believe that his best friend would be as corrupted as this. Jiraiya was shaken from his thoughts when he felt someone grab his hand. Are you alright? Jiraiya turned to the side to see Tsunade looking at him with a worried expression. Don't think too much of it today, we can deal with it tomorrow. I'm fine, Haim, don't worry, it's just that I still find it hard to believe, said Jiraiya while looking at Tsunade. I felt that Orochimaru was acting strange ever since the end of the war, but I never expected this. Did the village means this little to him? Did our friendship mean nothing to him? Finished Jiraiya, only whispering the last part. Tsunade barely caught it. Tsunade squeezed his hand as an act of comfort. She hated seeing him like this. Jiraiya's face should only have that goofy smile, not this moody complexion. Orochimaru was the cause of this, that no good traitorous scum. Despite being on the same team, Orochimaru had always put Tsunade off a bit whenever they were together. No matter if it was training or missions, she always thought that there was something off about him. It was because of this that she was not nearly as close to him as she was with Jiraiya, even before they were a couple. Hey, are you going to try to bring him back? Asked Tsunade, slightly scared of the answer. Jiraiya clearly noticed her trembling voice. Jiraiya knew Tsunade was scared that he would leave her to pursue the traitor. Jiraiya then simply smiled down at his lover and said with conviction, Tsuhaime, you are more important to me than anything. Normally I would have gone to find Orochimaru since would leave the village to travel anyway, but now that I have you, I would never leave you alone. You better get used to me around here, jokingly said Jiraiya at the end. Tsunade giggled and hugged his arm, feeling much relieved as she followed her love as they walked to their home. Jiraiya had a big yet simple apartment. The main living area was very open. A L-shaped sofa was attached to two sides of the room. A good-sized marble coffee table sat in the middle. The wall facing the sofa had several shelves that held small decorations. The kitchen was perpendicular to the living room, surrounded by a glass wall. The apartment had 3 rooms, one master bedroom, Kakashi's room, and one guest room. There was one main bathroom that is close to the living room and the 2 smaller bedrooms. The master bedroom has its own connected bathroom. Welcome to our humble abode, said Jiraiya humorously. Tsunade walked into her new home. She had been to Jiraiya's home on multiple occasions in the peace society. Jiraiya often had hosted gatherings and dinners parties for their team or for a larger group of friends. But this time felt entirely different than the time before. This time she had a feel of belonging. It felt nice. I really like it here, said Tsunade with a comfortable sigh. I'll see if I can fix up some supper. But while I do that, you can put your stuff in our room. With that, Jiraiya headed to the kitchen. Okay, thank you, Jiraiya-kun. After a 2-week absence, they thought that the house would be scarce of groceries. But as it turns out, Kakashi had refilled the fridge despite his rapid missions. Cooking up something simple, the two had dinner, occasionally starting some small talk. They stopped their conversation when they heard the front door unlocking. Turning over, they saw Kakashi stroll in the house, looking visibly tired. Hey Gaki, back from your report. Hearing his father's voice, Kakashi looked up to see the 2 remaining sanin smiling at him. Hi Jiraiya, nice to see you again, Tsunade-sama, pleasantly replied Kakashi. Kakashi, you can just call me Tsunade, seeing now that we will see each other every day. You don't need to be so formal. Yeah, I still really want you to call me Tusan, Jiraiya said in a whiny tone. You will be living with us, Tsunade-sam? Tsunade? Asked the surprised ANBU member, currently brushing off Jiraiya's statement. Tsunade smiled and replied, Yep, would you be okay with that? Of course I would be okay with it. The more the merrier, Tsunade smiled in response. Okay then, I already ate and I'm tired, so I'm gonna turn in. Kakashi, deciding to tease the new couple a bit, said, "Good night, Tsunade," Ka-san chuckling as he saw the flabbergasted look on the other two people. Jiraiya was certainly surprised. Not only did Kakashi call him Tsunade, he even called Tsunade Ka-san. Wow, I never expected that, thought Jiraiya. He looked over at Tsunade. She had a look of slight shock and amazement. Looking back at the direction of Kakashi's room, he thought to himself, I wonder what it will be like if Tsunade and I had a child, then the four of us would be a family. All three of us can teach our kid to be a ninja. I bet he would have blonde hair like his mother, but it will be spiky like mine. Wow, that will be a great life. As Jiraiya was daydreaming about his future, Tsunade was also trying to figure out her own feelings. What is this feeling I am getting? I feel nervous. Kakashi may have been joking, but if me and Jiraiya are really together, then I will logically would be Kakashi's mother figure. I think I would like that. It would be like when Nawaki was alive. Maybe Jiraiya and I can have another child. Oh, our child will be so cute. A little girl with long white hair. She will have to beat the boys off with a stick, that or Jiraiya kills them all first. Hehehe. Inwardly mused Tsunade, now feeling comfortable to try to be someone's mother. Her thoughts were interrupted when Jiraiya broke the silence. Have you ever wanted to start your own family? His tone was casual, obviously trying to ease into the topic. Tsunade got up from her seat and led Jiraiya to the sofa. She set Jiraiya down and then proceeded to sit on his lap, resting her body into his frame, then snuggled her head into the crook of his neck. Enjoying the comfort for a few moments before she answered. To be honest, I haven't thought about it up until Kakashi called me Ka-san, she said softly with her eyes closed. I think I would love it if he saw me as his mother figure, and I think that I would also be ready if we had our own child. As she said this, Jiraiya felt a bolt of shock down his spine. She wants to have a baby. This is great, but am I ready to be a father? Jiraiya then wrapped his arms lovingly around Tsunade and whispered into her ear. I would love to have another child, especially because it will be our child. But do you think I'm ready? I became Kakashi's father when he was 6 years old, at the time when he was already a chunin. I never had to change his diapers or feed him. Kumo already had taught him how to behave, and how to view life. I don't know if I can do that to my own child. You are definitely ready, said Tsunade. You were always good with kids. Your genin have great respect and admiration towards you, because of your strength and great view of life. Even the 3 orphans you took care of in AIM, by the stories you told me, they too have great love towards you. You will be a great father. Okay then. Let's start making our kid now, said Jiraiya as he suddenly picked Tsunade up bridal style. Ah, Tsunade squealed as she was carried to her room. Until the wee hours of the night, the master bedroom was filled with moans and grunts of pleasure. Thankfully, Jiraiya had set up a silencing seal so they won't scar Kakashi. Jiraiya, Tsunade, and the Hokage all returned to the Hokage tower the next day to discuss what actions to take regarding Orochimaru. The village elders and were also the Hokage advisors, Hamura Mitokado and Koharu Yuditane. Orochimaru will be put into the bingo book as an S-rank missing nin. He will have a kill-on-sight order, and a bounty of 100 million Ryo bounty on his head. Officially stated the Sandaime, as he signed the bingo book document. Jiraiya and Tsunade were a little surprised at the high bounty, but quickly understood as Orochimaru knows many of Konoha's secrets. Information that the village cannot afford to leak. Orochimaru is an incredibly powerful S-rank shinobi, so anything short of an entire ANBU team should not pursue him. Any exception would be the 2 of you, Jiraiya, Tsunade. Finished the Sandaime. Jiraiya and Tsunade just nodded in response. Jiraiya, notify your contacts to be on the lookout of Orochimaru. Once we have an accurate location, we will launch a preemptive attack against the traitor. Finished the Hokage. His tone showed the others that he now will not hesitate to kill Orochimaru. Hi, I will send them each a message via the toads, as I plan to stay in the village for the foreseeable future, said Jiraiya, making Tsunade smile and surprising the others. The Sandaime smiled at his 2 students and nodded. Dismissed. HAI, replied the occupants of the room. It has been 1 month since Jiraiya and Tsunade returned to Konoha. During the time they both had to do several missions, but none of them were a challenge for either of the 2 sanin. It was a bit tedious to have such frequent missions, especially because they couldn't spend as much time together as they have wanted. Most of the time they had for each other was at their apartment. Kakashi was a new ANBU member, so he had very frequent missions. Thus Jiraiya and Tsunade basically had the apartment to themselves. Tsunade was currently sitting comfortably on her couch enjoying her day off, but silently missing Jiraiya. Her hand was glowing a soft green as it hovered over her belly. Tsunade had started to train her new apprentice, Shizen. Shizen was the niece of Tsunade's deceased ex-boyfriend, Dan. After the death of her uncle, she has been living in a small apartment that belonged to her parents, but Tsunade had basically been her unofficial guardian. When Tsunade officially started to date Jiraiya, she had been nervous about telling Shizen. Tsunade knew that Shizen looked up at her uncle and was very happy when she found out that her uncle was dating the famous sanin. Now that she was dating Jiraiya, Shizen might think that she has forgotten her uncle Dan. Fortunately for Tsunade, Shizen did not react negatively to her new relationship. In fact, Shizen said that she was happy that Tsunade had finally found someone that can make her happy. But when Tsunade had been thinking over her situation on Shizen, she suddenly realized something. Her feelings for Dan felt really strong when they were at the peak of their relationship, but she now realized that her feelings for Jiraiya were much greater. Whenever Dan was on a mission, knowing that the man was a highly revered jonin, she was never worried that he would die that easily. But now with Jiraiya, a ninja that was immensely more powerful than Dan, she was constantly worried for him. She had never daydreamed about her and Dan, but now she daydreams about her and Jiraiya every day. She knew that there was a part of her that will always remember and cherish her time with Dan, but she now knows that Jiraiya is truly her soulmate. During the last month of living together, it really felt like they were a family. Jiraiya was the one that usually cooked dinner, something Tsunade always loved. She herself, being the heiress of the Senju clan, never really had to cook for herself, but she was really trying hard to learn how to prepare a good meal for her family. Kakashi was a very interesting person to live with. Physically, he was just a 13-year-old boy, but he was already a very strong and accomplished ninja. He never called her Kasan ever since that first day, but he was like her son in a way. She would usually be the one to heal his wounds when he was hurt from a mission. Kakashi could have went to the hospital, but he will usually come home injured. Maybe he wanted to be healed by her, because it made him feel like he had his mother back. Tsunade was checking her own pulse and chakra signature to check whether or not she was pregnant. If she was pregnant, her pulse will feel as if it has an echo, indicating that there was a second heart beating along with her own. By checking her chakra signature, she can tell if there is a second chakra network that was draining her chakra to maintain its form. If there was, then there was a new life growing inside of her. The sanin's hand hovered over her torso as her eyes widened. It is yes, cried out Tsunade. Tsunade sped towards the hospital with a series of extremely fast shunsin, and she cleared most of the village in under 3 minutes. Once Tsunade arrived, she quickly went inside to look for a medic. Coincidentally, the first medic she saw was Shizen. The black-haired young chunin was training as a medical ninja in the hospital, undergoing a medical course that Tsunade had created after she took on the role of the head medic of Konoha. Shizen, come over here, spoke Tsunade in a slightly louder voice, attracting the attention of Shizen, as well as many other people in the lobby of the hospital. Oh, what are you doing here on your day off, Tsunade-sama? Asked the girl as she walked up to her surrogate mother and teacher. Tsunade had a serious look on her face as she grabbed the girl's arm. I need you to check something for me, come to my office, commanded the sanin as she pulled the girl along behind her. Tsunade and her apprentice headed towards her office, which she received when she was offered the job as the head medic of Konoha. After the war, Konoha had gained a lot of money from villages that had lost, and the Hokage had developed the hospital to be much larger than before. Tsunade's room was fitting to her overwhelming reputation as a medic in the elemental nations. It was comparable to the Hokage's own office. It had its own medical library and archive inside it, and many state-of-the-art medical equipment along the sides. Shizen, I need you to check my chakra signature and pulse, said the woman as she sat down on her couch along with her student. Why, are you feeling chakra exhaustion? Asked the confused girl. She was wondering why her teacher couldn't check her own chakra. The blonde sanin had a huge smile on her face. I think I am pregnant, said Tsunade gleefully. I missed my period a few days ago, then I checked my pulse and chakra this morning. Everything was shown positive, but I wanted a second opinion. A bright smile appeared on the girl's face. Oh wow, this is great, said Shizen. I'll check right now. Shizen's hands started to glow green as she checked her sensei's belly, then checked her pulse on her wrist. The chunin's face turned from focused to hopeful, and lastly to happy. Yes, cried the girl happily. You are pregnant, Tsunade-sama. Tsunade squealed happily and proceeded to hug the daylights out of Shizen. Oh, this is the best day of my life, cried Tsunade as she spun Shizen around. Shizen enjoyed the hug with her surrogate mother, but her face was turning blue. Tsunade-sama air, wheezed out the girl as she patted Tsunade's back. Tsunade finally let the poor girl down with her bright smile still on her face. She couldn't wait to tell Jiraiya about their child. After all the effort they made to conceive a child, it had paid off. Tsunade remembered that Jiraiya was on a mission outside the village, but would probably be back within the day. A smirk came onto the blonde woman's face as she thought about the kinds of surprise that she could pull off with the time she had left. The sanin looked over at her student. Shizen, please don't tell anyone about this for now. I want to surprise Jiraiya-kun when he gets back, said the soon-to-be mother as she smiled at her surrogate daughter. The black-haired girl nodded with a giggle. Sure thing, Tsunade-sama, chirped Shizen happily. Jiraiya had just finished a mission and he had to go to the Hidden Moon village as a diplomat. Jiraiya was the prime candidate as the representative for Konoha because of his imposing stature as a sanin, one of the most powerful ninja that Konoha had ever produced. The mission was a breeze. He had 3 jounin accompany him as protection, but it was not like he needed it though. The sanin was treated as a guest of honor at the Hidden Moon, and the girls there were very attractive. If it was a month and a half ago, he would had spent a long time flirting with them, but now no one was more beautiful than his Tsunadeheim. Jiraiya headed back to his apartment after his report to the Hokage. And when Jiraiya arrived at his apartment, he was welcomed by a heavenly smell of dinner. After a long way back to Konoha, he was famished, so he quickly opened the door with a smile on his face. His hunger, though, was quickly forgotten when he laid his eyes on Tsunade. His lovely girlfriend was wearing a low-cut black dress that reached down to her thighs. It was also form-fitting, thus showing off her long legs, slim waist, and very full chest. The woman was leaning to the side a little as she winked at Jiraiya. "Welcome home, honey," said Tsunade sweetly. Jiraiya was still too busy checking out Tsunade's body to answer her question. At that moment, he absent-mindedly thought to himself that he could die happy. Giggling to herself, Tsunade walked up to her man, grabbed him by the collar, and pulled him down for a kiss. Finally breaking out of his stunned state, Jiraiya began to kiss back. Jiraiya wrapped his arms around Tsunade's waist and pulled her closer against him. Jiraiya had always loved Tsunade's delicate scent of roses, and he was relishing in it as he enjoyed passionately kissing the woman he loved more than anything. After an extensive makeout session, they rested into a hugging position on the couch, briefly forgetting about the steaming dinner on the table. Jiraiya ran his hand through his love's hair. "What's the occasion, Haim-chan?" asked the man with a whisper close to his lover's ear. "Can't I just wanted to look good and prepare a good meal for you," said Tsunade as she leaned into him harder. "Come on, honey, let's have dinner." Jiraiya and his lover sat down across from each other. As they ate, Jiraiya constantly said to Tsunade that the food was divine, a vast improvement since the last time she cooked. Jiraiya may have been biased about his words as he had wanted to come home to Tsunade's food since he was a genin. He could still remember how amazing it was when Tsunade actually made their team some lunch bentos many years ago. He was happier than he ever had been. After dinner, Tsunade created several kage bunshin to clean up the dinner table, as the original led Jiraiya to the couch. "Tsunade-chan, do you have something to tell me?" asked Jiraiya, sensing something was off about Tsunade. She was not usually this bubbly. "Okay." Tsunade took several deep breaths before she continued. "I was checking my pulse and chakra signature this morning, and just in case I went to the hospital to get Shizen to check me also." Jiraiya was looking at her intently, still wondering about what happened. "Both Shizen and me had the same results, Jiraiya. I'm pregnant." Jiraiya was silent, and had the same facial expression before and after the news. "Jiraiya-kun? Say something," said Tsunade with a smile on her face as she stroked her lover's cheeks. Suddenly Jiraiya's face had on a giant grin as he picked up Tsunade and spun her around a few times. "This is great. I'm going to be a father," cried Jiraiya happily before he suddenly placed Tsunade down and had on a look of shock. "Oh my Kami, I shouldn't have spun you around, right? Will that affect the baby, are you ill?" Jiraiya was cut off by Tsunade before he had a nervous breakdown. "Don't worry, none of what you did will affect the baby. I am one of the best medics in the world, you don't need to worry about me or the baby's health." Tsunade then had on a saucy grin. "Now take me to the room and make love to me." "What? But will that affect the bab?" Jiraiya was cut off as he was pulled into a kiss and shoved into the bedroom. It was 10 o'clock in the morning in Konoha, and the village was swarmed with tons of missions, ranging from DS ranks. Thankfully there were many ninja that were suitable for all the missions. But unfortunately, there was only one Hokage. Sarutobi was buried under mountains of paperwork, making him regret that he ever chose to become a ninja. The aged Hokage was used to the paperwork over the years, but it had been a particularly stressful day. The day before, he had received some disturbing intelligence from one of Konoha's contacts that Kumo has plans for kidnapping the children of several bloodline clans in various countries. The Uchiha and Hyuga are two of the few on their list. The heir of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Itachi, was 6 years old, and had already become a genin. He was the one boy that has potential to become one of the greatest shinobi of Konoha, and losing him to Kumo would be a catastrophe. The Hyuga main family currently have no heir, but the wife of the Hyuga clan head, Hyuga Hitomi, was pregnant, and that information must have somehow leaked out of the village, as Kumo would not plan to kidnap a branch member that has a caged bird seal. Both the bloodline of the Hyuga and Uchiha were two of the most famous and powerful bloodlines of the elemental nations, and also two of the reasons why Konoha was feared and hailed as the most powerful of the 5 great villages. The Hokage had already sent several ANBU squads to be on patrol around the village constantly, in case of any sort of infiltration. Sarutobi was knocked out of his work-induced stupor by several knocks on his door. "Come in," spoke Sarutobi professionally. The office door opened to show respective the Uchiha and Hyuga clans heads respectively, Uchiha Fugaku and Hyuga Hayashi. "Good morning, Hokage-sama," chorused the two powerful shinobi. "Good morning, Hayashi-san, Fugaku-san. Thank you for coming to this meeting this morning. Please sit down," said the Hokage as the two clan heads sat down on his office chairs. "May I ask what is this meeting pertaining, Hokage-sama? It is unusual that you need to talk to both Hayashi-san and I alone," asked a curious Fugaku, with Hayashi nodding at his question. "Yesterday we were delivered some disturbing intel," started Sarutobi with an expressionless face. "It contained information stating that Kumo will try to kidnap the children of several bloodline clans throughout the world, including both your own," stated the Sandaime as Hayashi and Fugaku both had on slightly shocked faces. "Kumo dares to take such action so soon after the World War?" growled Hayashi angrily. It is safe to assume that they want to take advantage of the weakened state of the other villages after the war. Kumo was the village that suffered the least damage, analyzed Fugaku. The news of your young son must have somehow been leaked outside the village, stated the Sandaime, worrying Fugaku even more. The Sharingan and the Byakugan had always been two of the most powerful Kekkei Genkai in the world, so Kumo would definitely be after it, Sarutobi continued as Fugaku nodded. There is no way that we will allow two of our most powerful bloodlines to be stolen from us. Therefore I hereby purpose that both your clans will work in conjunction with my ANBU to protect the vulnerable people of your clans. Hayashi and Fugaku both showed thoughtful expressions as they analyzed the situation. There is no way that I can allow my heir to be robbed from me. Working with the Hokage would be beneficial for us right now. Hitomi's and my future child will be the only heir of the Hyuga clan. Losing him, or her, will definitely cause disturbances throughout the main and branch members of the clan. Hitomi will also be devastated. I must not let that happen. The ANBU Black Ops will definitely be very helpful, thought Hayashi. The Hyuga is willing to offer its full cooperation to the ANBU Black Ops, said Hayashi. As will the Uchiha, echoed Fugaku with a nod. I am glad. Please arrange your own plans within the clan homes, and I will tell my ANBU to act on your orders as long as it is for your protection, said Sarutobi as Hayashi and Fugaku nod in response. Dismissed. Hi, Hokage-sama. As the two left the Hokage office, Jiraiya and Tsunade were walking to the Hokage tower hand in hand. It was refreshing to walk at such leisurely pace. The weather was very nice, sunny day with no clouds, and just a light breeze to cool the people down. The village was as lively as usual, and the people seemed really happy to be alive. Sensei would be very happy when he hears our news, said a smiling Tsunade as she looked up at Jiraiya. Definitely, it'll be another grandchild for him, happily said the white-haired man as he smiled at his lover. As the two continued their stroll, Tsunade suddenly remembered something. Jiraiya-kun, what name should we give our baby? Jiraiya seemed to be contemplating as he suddenly had on a knowing look. Naruto Senju Namikaze. Naruto, said the man with a soft smile on his face. Maelstrom, ha, I like it, said Tsunade as she thought it over. But how did you have such a specific name thought out so fast? Jiraiya smiled as he answered. Naruto is the name of the protagonist of my first book, Legend of the Gutsy Ninja. I want our son to grow up to become a ninja like that, one that will be able to bring peace to the world. I have never read that book. Do you still have a copy of it? I should still have a copy. Do you want to read it? Asked Jiraiya with a smirk. Yes, it should be interesting if you are willing to name our son after it, said the woman before she paused for a while. Hey, wait, what if we have a little girl instead of a boy? Said Tsunade loudly. Oh, I know that it will be a boy, I got a feeling, said Jiraiya with a smirk. Oh no, it will be a cute white-haired girl, said Tsunade with a challenging look. Oh Haim, when was the last time you won a bet? Hee hee. Just you wait, Baka, challenged Tsunade as she gave Jiraiya a mock glare. Before the two sanin knew it, they arrived at the Hokage's tower. They approached Hikari that was working intently at her desk. Like her boss, Hikari's desk was also filled with many folders and files, most likely all the finished missions that needed to be signed by the Hokage. Hey Hikari-san, is Sensei available? Asked Jiraiya with a laid-back tone as he and Tsunade walked up to the woman's desk. Oh hey Tsunade, Jiraiya, greeted the woman kindly. Hokage-sama just finished a meeting, he should be free now except for the paperwork, replied Hikari with a smile. Tsunade giggled as she remembered how her sensei had always complained about his mountains of paperwork. Well, he will be glad to catch a break, we need to talk to him for a bit. Okay, you two go ahead, chirped Hikari as she returned to her work. Jiraiya knocked a couple of times on the door. Hearing his sensei's voice say come in through the door, he led the both of them through the entrance. As the two sanin stepped inside the office, they noticed that their sensei looked more disheveled and older than normal, and was surrounded by mountains of paperwork. It was really quite funny to see the Kami no Shinobi like so. Hey sensei, glad to see you so happy, joked Jiraiya as Tsunade giggled. Sarutobi's face lit up as he saw his students walk in his office, hoping that they will allow him to stop working for a while, and he can have a nice conversation with his surrogate son and daughter. Very funny, Jiraiya. Are you and Tsunade-chan here to visit your beloved sensei? Stated the Hokage with a smirk. Of course we are, sensei. We also have some great news to tell you, said Tsunade with a smile, while she imagined what her sensei's face would be like when she told him the news. The Sandaime almost grimaced at the though of more bad intelligence. Good news, I hope. Oh, I think you will be very happy, chirped the blonde sanin as she smiled at her teacher. Okay, enough with the suspense, what is it? Jiraiya looked at Tsunade and smiled, indicating that she should be the one to tell. Tsunade happily nodded and turned to her sensei enthusiastically. Sensei, we're having a baby. Sarutobi had wide eyes as he absorbed what Tsunade said. Suddenly he had a huge grin on his face, showing obvious happiness for his students. Tsunade and Jiraiya's child would be like a grandchild to him. Quickly standing up, he walked over to his students and proceeded to hug them tightly. I am very happy for the both of you. I know you two will be great parents, and your child will be a great shinobi. Jiraiya chuckled and nodded. Of course, he is our son after all. He will be a very strong and talented shinobi if he is anything like his parents. making Tsunade sigh as she heard her lover say that it is going to be a son again. Jiraiya and Tsunade was surprised when Sarutobi suddenly had on a serious and worried expression. "Sensei, is something wrong?" asked the spy master of Konoha. Sarutobi nodded, taking a few deep breaths as he repeated to tell Jiraiya and Tsunade what he told Fugaku and Hayashi a few moments ago. Jiraiya was very surprised that Kumo would do something so reckless right after a world war. Bloodlines are the most treasured possessions of ninja villages. Trying to kidnap children from the clans would result in wars. "You are telling us this because you are afraid that our child will also be targeted?" asked Tsunade as she gripped her fists tightly. "Tsunade-chan, you are the only known member of the Senju clan that is still alive. Not only that, but the child is the son or daughter of you and Jiraiya, two of the most powerful shinobi in the elemental nations. And Kumo will undoubtedly feel extremely threatened by such a person. So we must consider that they will try to kidnap your child even if the Senju clan doesn't have an official bloodline." Tsunade was very angry. She was very happy that she was going to be a mother and have a happy family with Jiraiya, but the Kumo sons of bitches were threatening her child that wasn't even born yet. "I don't care whether it would start a war or not, but if they dare to harm my child, I will do anything to destroy the Refuge and his damned village," roared Tsunade. The Sandaime sighed and nodded with his eyes closed. "I know your personality very well, Tsunade-chan, and I understand that a mother will do anything to protect her child. But we shouldn't be talking about how we will react if they manage to kidnap one of our own. We must take precautions. If the heir of the Senju clan was to be kidnapped by Kumo, it will cause international havoc among the shinobi world, especially in Hai no Kuni." Jiraiya nodded as he wrapped his arm around his lover's shoulders. "Sensei is right, Tsunade. We are two of the sanin. It will be very hard to harm our child if both of us are there with him. But despite that, we still don't want them to attempt it, as just a mere attempt will cause international disturbances that might trigger another war. That is something that either the people or the village can handle right now." The Sandaime nodded his head, silently agreeing with Jiraiya. Tsunade nodded her head, now calming down. She decided to try and find a solution. "So we should hide that fact that I am pregnant. As much as I don't want to, I am afraid that it is the most simple and effective way," said Tsunade-sensei. "That would be a very hard thing to do if we are still in the village," Jiraiya offered as he took up a thinking position. "The villagers do not know that we are trying to hide the fact that Tsunade is pregnant. The Inuzuka and Hyuga will be able to tell by their noses and eyes that Tsunade is pregnant. They will just think that she is hiding it from her friends or the village as a surprise, but not to prevent a crisis. There will be nothing holding back the gossip and rumors that will begin to float around the village. The rumor will also spread like wildfire. Ever since last month a lot of people have seen two of together. It is no longer a surprise that we are dating. The people will spread the news that we are having a baby because they will be very happy if that is true. Our baby will be the heir of two Sanins and the Senju clan." Tsunade and Sarutobi were enlightened by Jiraiya's quick conclusion. It was very simple. The villagers will not refrain from spreading rumors simply because they don't know of the implications of their actions. We also can't just tell the Inuzuka or the Hyuga clan heads about our situation because that means they will have to tell their clan about the pregnancy. Stopping a rumor is nowhere near as hard as trying to prevent a leak of a secret that over 500 people knows about. Jiraiya stared intently at his lover and sensei as he had on a conclusive look. "Tsunade and I must leave the village until our baby is born, maybe even longer." Jiraiya's statement caused some shock to go through the other two occupants of the room. It will not solve the whole problem, but it will prevent the Inuzuka and Hyuga from finding out about the pregnancy, thus eliminating the treat of rumors and therefore stopping the Kumo spies from paying attention to us. We can decide what to do regarding Kumo when we come back to the village after the baby is born, because then Tsunade will be able to fight without any restraint, and the baby could be hidden within the village if need be. "No!" cried the Fiel Sanin as she glared over at her lover. "Jiraiya, I will not hide our baby from the world and have him or her live a life of isolation. If that is what it means if we stay in the village, then we will raise the baby outside the village." "Tsunade, the hiding will only be temporary, but if need be, we would have to raise the baby outside of the village. That will solve all the problems for our baby." Sarutobi nodded in response, showing that he was not against the idea. Although Konoha, in a manner of speaking, will lose the two of the remaining Sanin, but it will still be better than losing the Senju heir. That idea is appeasable. You two can be classified as doing a long-term mission assigned by me personally. Your family can return to the village once the threat has gone, or your child is capable of defending himself," said the Sandaime logically. Tsunade felt the need to ask a question. "Sensei, Konoha is the strongest shinobi village in the elemental nations. Why the fuck are we running away from a mere threat by Kumo?" Surprisingly, it was Jiraiya that answered. "Tsuchan, it doesn't matter who is the stronger village. Just because Kumo is being unreasonable and irresponsible, it doesn't mean that we have the right to do the same thing. This whole situation can cause the Fourth Shinobi World War. We have the responsibility, as a shinobi village, to stop any wars from destroying the lives of millions of people." Sarutobi was very proud of Jiraiya at that moment. His words were ones of a Hokage. He could not help but regret that he paid more attention to the traitorous snake than the fine shinobi. Tsunade reluctantly nodded at Jiraiya's answer. They couldn't be so selfish. Her ancestors will be rolling in their graves if they were to start a war and jeopardize the well-being of the village for personal reasons. We still have a few weeks before the symptoms of my pregnancy will show, so we still have time to think about this. But we cannot let Kumo step on us over and over again. We must find a way to stop them and retaliate. Jiraiya and Sarutobi nodded to her reasoning. But if we are going to be away from the village during my pregnancy, there is a safe place that we can go. Where is that? Asked the confused Jiraiya. He was just thinking of the same thing a few minutes ago, and he could think of anywhere safer than Konoha already. We can go to where my Bachan is right now, Uzumaki. Uzumaki, a small country located at the coast of High no Kuni. The small island once contained one of the powerful shinobi village in the elemental nations, Uzuakure. Its ninja were revered for their fuinjutsu, to the point that it made them some of the most feared shinobi in the world. The head shinobi clan of the village was the Uzumaki clan, distant relatives of the Senju clan. Even the Shodaime Hokage married an Uzumaki woman after Konoha was founded, and it brought Konoha much closer to Uzuakure. The woman was not any Uzumaki, she was the daughter of the clan head, and a known prodigy of the clan, Uzumaki Mito. It was also because of Uzumaki Mito that the Shodaime gained an upper hand when he was fighting Uchiha Madara. At the time of the cataclysmic battle, the leader of the Senju and the Uchiha were almost equal in strength, with the Shodaime being stronger by a tiny margin. Madara, seeing the tide of the battle was tilting against his favor, he deciding to use his trump card. He summoned the most powerful of all Bija, the Kyubi no Kitsune. The beast was truly incredible, the power it showed was apocalyptic. With a swipe of one of its tails, it could level mountains and valleys, and send tsunami to the coasts. The Shodai of Konoha was known as the most powerful shinobi of his time, and he had proved his power when he managed to defeat Uchiha Madara as well as take control over the Kyubi during the battle. It took everything the man had, and his will of fire had lasted through the battle and diminished the hatred caused by the Uchiha. Even though the Uchiha man was defeated, Hashirama still had to deal with the Kyubi, as it will eventually wake up from its slumber created by the Shodai. Knowing that she had to help her husband, Mito took advantage of the moment that the Kyubi was unconscious, and sealed it within herself using the Shisho Fuin, creating and becoming the first Jinchuriki of the Kyubi. The crisis was finally over after the sealing of the Bijou, but it laid behind scars. The area which the battle took place was split asunder, and will be known for the future generation as the Valley of the End. A place where a never-ending river flows, just like the battles that will never end. At the time, the elemental nations were slowly but surely settling into multiple countries with their own shinobi villages. The Uzumaki established their village within their namesake, Yuzu no Kuni. Despite being in two separate nations, Konoha and Yuzu kept very close relations with each other. Konoha had even included the Yuzu symbol within their shinobi symbol, as well as their shinobi flak jackets. During the Second Shinobi World War, Uzuakure was targeted by Iwagakure and Kumogakure due to their skill with fuinjutsu. It ultimately was destroyed by the two nations. Any survivors of the village were scattered among the world, forever in purgatory. The people of Uzuakure were noted to have notoriously long lives, so it gained the epithet the village of longevity. Mito Uzumaki was no exception. She was born with naturally strong-like force, which was further complemented by her being the Kyubi Jinchuriki. After the death of her husband, Mito had stayed in Konoha, taking care of her children, and later on grandchildren. Mito loved her family deeply. The death of her son and daughter-in-law had devastated her. They were still very young, and was forced to leave behind their children. Tsunade was only a newly instated genin at the time, and Nawaki was merely a toddler. Mito was the only family they had left. She was naturally very proud of her granddaughter when she made a name of herself by contributions in the war. But the death of Nawaki was the last hit she could take. Nawaki was only a genin when he died. He was filled with dreams and ambitions that she really believed he would accomplish. Deciding that she needed to leave Konoha, she decided to visit her now destroyed homeland. The Sandaime really didn't want her to leave as she was a very important figure in Konoha, but Sarutobi still had major respect for the wife of his sensei, so he ultimately let her go. So, in over 50 years, Uzumaki Mito returned to Yuzu no Kuni. Tsunade and Jiraiya were both walking through the village in silence, each thinking of a solution that would be best for everybody in the current situation. Tsunade knew that Yuzu no Kuni would be a very safe place. Everybody in the elemental nations thought that Uzuakure was destroyed, but that was not entirely true. About 15 years ago, her grandmother, Uzumaki Mito, set out to find the ruins of Uzuakure. She had sent Tsunade a letter containing information of what she had found. When Tsunade read the letter, she was very surprised. There were survivors. Tsunade always knew that the Uzumaki was not extinct, but figured that everybody had ran away from Yuzu no Kuni. According to her grandmother's letter, the village was mostly destroyed, but there was a single Uzumaki family that had survived the battles and stayed in the village, trying to repair their home. The family only consisted of 4 people. A father and a mother, their son and his fiancée. The parent were retired shinobi who were too old to fight in the war. They survived because they were shielded by some large debris that hid them from view and wasn't heavy enough to kill them. The two younger ones were seasoned jonin of Yuzu. They had fought in the front lines gallantly, and it was by a miracle that they had survived. At the time, a Kumo shinobi launched an A-rank right-on jutsu straight at the two. They both wanted to shield the blast from the other. The result was that the both took the hit and spread it to damage of the jutsu evenly amongst the two of them. The damage spread was not enough to kill them, but it did knock them out at the time. Thinking that the two was dead, the enemy had gone to pursue other Yuzu shinobi. Unfortunately, the right-on chakra of the jutsu had caused the two to suffer enormous chakra network damage, and they were unable to mold chakra ever again. When Mito arrived at the destroyed village, she was detected by a seal that was set up by the remaining Uzumaki. Within minutes she was greeted by a ready-for-battle family. Despite being unable to use chakra, there were still some few ninjutsu that are open to the two jonin, and the older couple still had some of their skills from their prime. After calming down and explaining to the Uzumakis who she was, they were overjoyed to know that there was still Uzumakis willing to help their homeland. Mito had already been in Yuzu for over 15 years already, trying to salvage what was left of their culture and few ninjutsu. Both the Sandaime and Jiraiya knew that it would be a safe idea for Tsunade to have her baby in Yuzu. Not only was it geographically secure, she would also have Uzumaki Mito there to help her in case of need. Tsunade knew that her grandmother would be overjoyed if she knew her lovely granddaughter was having a baby, and would welcome her and Jiraiya with open arms. Not to mention that Tsunade herself really missed her grandmother. After her parents died, it was her grandma that took care of her and Iwaki. To her, Mito will always be that loving and gentle soul. Jiraiya-kun, I think we should go to Yuzu no Kuni during my pregnancy, whispered Tsunade, making sure that no one was within earshot. Jiraiya nodded as he answered, Yuzu no Kuni is certainly the number one choice at the moment, said Jiraiya matter-of-factly. It would also be great if your grandma would get to meet her great-grandchild, said Jiraiya with a lightened expression. Tsunade nodded as Jiraiya continued, we must leave Konoha during your pregnancy, that much we know. Until we establish enough power that will intimidate Kumo, we must not allow an internation dispute to happen between us. Okay, let's go to Yuzu no Kuni. Jiraiya, Tsunade and Sarutobi had sent a messenger bird to Yuzu no Kuni yesterday. It should be arriving at the destination very soon as it takes only 1 day by flight to get to Yuzu no Kuni. The letter was sealed by Tsunade's blood, meaning that only a relative of Tsunade could open it. Tsunade and Jiraiya were already packed and ready to leave, they are just waiting for a reply. A mission file was also created by the Sandaime stating that he is assigning Senju Tsunade and Namikaze Jiraiya a S-rank long-term mission that will take about a year to 4 years depending on circumstances. Initially, the Hokage didn't want 2 of the remaining sanin to leave the village for that long, but the extra 3 years will eliminate any sudden risks that would come up pertaining to Senju heir. There are only a handful of people in the village that knows about Tsunade's pregnancy. Excluding Jiraiya and Tsunade, only the Hokage, Kakashi and Shizen knows. Kakashi and Shizen had been contacted by the Hokage and were told to keep the pregnancy a secret. Shizen's being the one to confirm the pregnancy was not surprised by the fact of the baby, but she was enlightened when she was told the dangers of the child will have his identity was leaked. Kakashi on the other hand was very surprised by the pregnancy. He didn't think his dad and Tsunade would have a child so soon. On one hand he was also very happy because the child would be his little brother or sister, something that he had always wanted, but on the other hand, he can't follow them to Yuzu no Kuni. The village right now really needs high-level shinobi inside the village to induce fear into potential enemies, and to carry out high-rank missions to show the world that they still maintain their strength. Kakashi knew that it was his duty as a Konoha shinobi to stay in the village, but he didn't want to lose his family again, even though it was only for 4 years. Jiraiya was also uncomfortable leaving Kakashi by himself in the village, but he knew there was no other way. Kakashi and his relationship had grown into one of real father and son. They often trained and talked to each other. Sometimes Kakashi would tell Jiraiya his stress and pressure caused by constant ANBU missions, which Jiraiya had a lot of patience for and would have insightful advice for his son. Both were afraid that their relationship would deteriorate as time goes by. It was 8 o'clock at night, and Tsunade was already all asleep. She had a busy day. She had to assign many new jobs to the current hospital staff, as they have to take over what she had to do. She also left Shizen a bunch of scrolls that contained advanced medical ninjutsu that she developed, hoping that Shizen will continue to progress as a medical ninja. Jiraiya was at Tsunade's side, brushing a stray strand of hair away from her face and stroking her still flat stomach, which was covered by a white nightgown. Jiraiya was very excited about the baby. Even though he has Kakashi and had taken care of the 3 AIM kids, this would be the first time he would take care of a baby. His kid might be the child of prophecy he has been looking for his entire life. After all, being the heir of the Senju clan and the child of 2 sanin, their child undoubtedly would be very powerful. A slight nudge from Tsunade broke Jiraiya out of his thoughts, as he looked down to see the beautiful brown eyes of his lover staring back at him. He could look into those eyes for the rest of his life and not get tired of them. In fact, he wanted to spend the rest of his life with Tsunade. Sorry, did I wake you, Haim? Yes, but it okay, I love waking up to you, said Tsunade with a smile as she leaned up to kiss him. Returning the kiss, Jiraiya thought to himself, I need to ask her now. Breaking the kiss, Jiraiya stared deep into Tsunade's eyes, slightly surprising Tsunade. Is something the matter, honey? Tsunade-chan, when we arrive at Yuzu no Kuni, will you marry me? Asked Jiraiya nervously, slightly afraid of her answer. Tsunade was stunned to say the very least. She wasn't expected that. She knew that Jiraiya would one day ask her to marry him, but she didn't know that it would be so sudden. Is it because of the baby does he feel obliged to marry me? Thought Tsunade vulnerably. But as she thought the situation over, she knew that Jiraiya wouldn't want to marry her just because of the baby. He loves her, she knew that he would ask her no matter what. Looking back at Jiraiya, she saw that he had on a sad and regretful expression. Knowing that he might be thinking that she'll reject him, she quickly blurted out, yes. Was Jiraiya's intelligent response. Yes, I would love to marry you, Jiraiya-kun, said Tsunade with the largest smile she could muster. Jiraiya's face broke into a huge grin as he hugged her furiously while chanting, yes, yes, yes. Smiling, Tsunade kissed Jiraiya again, effectively calming him down from his high. Tsunade slowly disrobed herself and proceeded to straddle his waist. And now this is for celebration, and for you waking me up. Their room would have moans and grunts echoing within its wall for hours to come. The next morning Jiraiya was the first to wake up. Noticing that Tsunade was still sleeping, he decided to just lay there to gather his thoughts. Jiraiya's thoughts drifted to Kakashi. He knew that the boy was strong physically, but was fragile mentally. After the loss of his biological parents, Kakashi had to try very hard until he managed to open up to people. He also had taken a huge blow when Obito had died. Now that he needs to be separate from his family, he might be unable to take it. Jiraiya knew that he needed to talk to Kakashi, so with that thought, he decided to go to Kakashi's room. Kakashi was staring at the ceiling of his room. For a boy of 14, he had a very plain bedroom. It had light yellow walls with several pictures hanging on it. There were pictures of Konoha, and various sceneries. Several ones that stood out were that picture of Kakashi's biological father Tsukumo hugging his pregnant mother Hitomo. It was the only picture Kakashi had of his entire biological family as his mother died at childbirth. There were several bookshelves that was filled with ninja scrolls and bingo books. Though discreetly hidden between several encyclopedias were several adult magazines that he enjoys studying, as well as a series of books that his adopted father had written before he started dating Tsunade. Ika Violence, which he read almost every night. Laying on his blue twin-sized bed, Kakashi was thinking about what his life would be like when Jiraiya and Tsunade left. Sure, after his change of attitude he made much more friends than he had his entire life. People like Sarutobi Asuma, Yuhi Kurenai and Shizen were very nice to talk to, and Mito Guy, despite his idiosyncrasies, was a very good friend and a strong sparring partner. For the last month he really enjoyed living with his adopted family. It was the first time in his life that he had a complete family, but unfortunately, like all things, at some point it must end. Kakashi's depressing thoughts were interrupted when he heard someone knock on his door. "Come in," said Kakashi with his recently developed carefree voice. The door opened to reveal Jiraiya. Almost immediately Kakashi shut off all of his negative emotions off of his face. But Jiraiya managed to catch a glimpse of his true feelings. "Hey Gaki, how are you feeling?" asked Jiraiya with a caring voice. "I'm fine, Tusan." Kakashi had started to call Jiraiya Tusan for a few weeks now. It no longer felt like that he was betraying his biological father. Kakashi knew that his birth father would want him to have his own family. Jiraiya smiled when he heard Kakashi call him his Tusan. He always liked the feeling of being a father. Though he is slightly put off that Kakashi is once again hiding his feelings of others. "Kakashi, I'm sorry," said the man, making Kakashi look up at him. "I know it's a bad time to leave you alone in the village, but I want you to know that you will never be forgotten or unloved. I am your father and I will always be there for you and love you, and the same thing goes for Tsunade. She might not say it out loud, but she really likes being your mother figure, and she truly cares and values you." Kakashi felt his defense weakening. Is he serious? Maybe I won't lose this family after all, thought the young man, and it was then that he felt something wet drip down his face. Kakashi reached up to touch his face, and only then did he know that he was crying. He hadn't cried since the death of his father, as he thought of crying as a sign of weakness and fragility. Jiraiya was also surprised to see Kakashi cry, as he has never seen the boy cry, but he was also glad because tears will help release some repressed feelings of Kakashi. Jiraiya slowly approached Kakashi to give him a fatherly hug. "It's okay, you will always have a family. You have a father, a mother, and a soon-to-be-born brother or sister." Kakashi proceeded to nod into his father's shoulder, feeling surprisingly relieved. It took about 5 minutes for Kakashi to calm down. The two began to have some small talk, now feeling much better than before, and it was then that something caught Jiraiya's eyes. It was a few familiar side book covers of Ika Violence. "Oh ho ho, what do we have here?" said Jiraiya teasingly as he walked toward the bookshelf to retrieve the books he wrote. Kakashi's face burned up as his father caught him reading those books. He tried to tell an excuse, but nothing comes to mind. His mask-covered mouth just moved up and down with nothing coming out. "I see you are enjoying my beautiful masterpieces of art, and seeing the condition of the books you read them a lot. Ugh, ha 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 ha, don't worry Gaki, it is normal that a kid your age would want to read this genre of books. It might be even worse for you since you get to look at those kunoichi in those tight form-fitting ANBU pants, said Jiraiya with a perverted grin that he rarely had anymore. With a sigh, Kakashi gave up finding an excuse. He was a growing boy in puberty with crazy hormones appearing out of nowhere spontaneously. Yeah, I really like those books. By the way, are Kasumi and Natsuki going to make it as lesbians? Jiraiya had on a straight face as he heard what Kakashi asked, and soon a grin appeared, and finally he erupted into a fit of laughter. Oh Kami, ha ha ha, I bet you really want to know if those hot lesbian beauties would have sex, right? Kakashi nodded furiously as he burned up. Well, I don't think I will continue these books anymore as I already have Tsunade, and since most of the inspiration from the books are my personal experiences, I won't have any inspiration, because I don't want your mother to kill me. Kakashi was disappointed that the Ika Ika series is discontinued, but was surprised that the book were based on his father's personal experiences. You mean that the stories were based on your life? Asked the young man with you in his voice. Oh yeah, I met some beautiful woman when I was traveling. Wow, you're the man Tusan, but it sucks that you can't continue the series. It is true that I like reading, especially those books, but Tsunade is all I need for the rest of my life. You would understand when you find that special girl of your life, Jiraiya said with a faraway look, before his face adopted a grin as he continued. Hey, I got an idea. How about you continue the series for me? Kakashi choked on his own spit as he heard what his father said. What? Yeah, I am sure that you will have your own stories to tell as you work in ANBU. After all, there is nothing like adrenaline-filled mission as foreplay, right? Said the man with a chuckle. I will contact my publisher about you tomorrow. Oh, you are gonna do great. Wait, Tusan, are you sure? Yes, Kakashi ultimately agreed to Jiraiya's offer. He was personally very excited about it. He had never really looked for a girlfriend, but he was always a fan of the fairer sex. And after the was adopted by the former super pervert, he has developed a somewhat inner pervert himself. He doesn't want to use girls like some men does though. Despite his pervert tendencies, he has a lot of respect for women. That was why he could date Rin. He really didn't see her in that light. He didn't want to play with her feelings. Starting tomorrow, he might start flirting back to some girls he admired, just for research. Mito Uzumaki was living in a small house she and her remaining Uzumaki built together. The older couple goes by the names of Hiroko and Hikari Uzumaki, and their son is named Hiroshi Uzumaki, who married Tomo Uzumaki. During the 15 years they were together, they managed to recover most of Yuzuri's Ogakure's scrolls and jutsu. About 10 years ago, Hiroko died of old age at 77, with Hikari following a few months after at 75. Hiroshi and Tomo were from the Uzumaki clan, thus they should have strong life force and longevity. Unfortunately, after being hit by that right jutsu that destroyed their chakra network, their lifespan was shortened considerably. Hiroshi died of natural cause a few months ago, and Tomo was taken when she gave birth to a healthy girl just a few days ago. It seems that Tomo only had enough willpower to last until she gave birth, but she spent the last of her willpower during childbirth. She died a few moments after she first laid eyes on her beautiful daughter. They both had thought of a name for the baby girl before they died: Kushina, Uzumaki Kushina. The baby already had hints of Uzumaki red hair, pale skin tone, and a pair of beautiful violet eyes. They had left Kushina to the care of Mito, a task which Mito had instantly agreed to, but she knew that she doesn't have a long enough life to watch the girl grow up. She must bring her back to Konoha. Uzumaki Mito was carrying little Kushina in her arms as she got ready to pack up her belongings and head to Konoha, but it was at that moment she sensed something approaching. Standing on guard, she waited for the object to come into view. She relaxed when she saw that it was a messenger bird. And she was also very surprised that it was from her granddaughter, as she hadn't heard from Tsunade for a few years already. The elder quickly opened the letter attached, as she thought that it might be an emergency. Once again surprised that it was protected by a blood seal, she quickly swiped some of her blood over the seal. Finally getting her hand on the letter, she began to read. A smile graced her face as she read it, and it only got wider as she read, and at the end she was ecstatic. Tsunade was having a baby with Jiraiya. She always wanted those two to be together, as she knew that Jiraiya truly loved her granddaughter, and now she would have a great-grandchild. To make things even better, they want to come to Yuzu during the pregnancy. Even though the reason was because of danger, Mito was very happy that Tsunade would come to Yuzu. Mito honestly did not want to leave Yuzu, but for the sake of Kushina she must. But because Tsunade was coming, she could tell her to bring more supplies and resources so they can stay a while longer. As if sensing her happiness, Kushina started to giggle at her surrogate great-grandma, making her look even more adorable. Oh, Kushi-chan is also happy, right? You are going to be great friends with Tsunade-chan's baby. Mito happily said to the baby as she formulated a response to Konoha. She stated that she would be more than happy to have her granddaughter live with her again, and that she needed more resources and supplies, so Mito gave them authority to access the Senju clan account, as she was still the clan head. Attaching the message to the Konoha messenger bird, she let it fly back to Konoha as she anxiously awaited for her granddaughter and grandson-in-law's arrival. Sarutobi was brooding in his office. On his desk were several stacks of paperwork, each one was about 3 feet tall. The Hokage usually only gets one stack of paper that high in a single day, but it was the day that the Civilian Council found out about the long-term mission Jiraiya and Tsunade were assigned. The Civilian Council had always been the cause of many headaches for the Hokage and the Shinobi Council. Since the establishment of Konoha as a shinobi village, civilians had been an important part of society. Since the civilians compose of over half of Konoha's population, the village would have to account for their opinion as well, hence the development of the Civilian Council. At first, the Civilian Council were only allowed to partake in matters that only affects the civil matters of the village. That has changed ever since the Second Shinobi World War. The sudden deaths of several clan heads caused constant distress within the village. The Naidame Hokage, Senju Tobirama, was forced to give more power to the civil council so that they can help take care of the internal matters of the village while the shinobi was at war. After the war, the shinobi clans of Konoha took a long time to recuperate. It gave more than enough time to the Civilian Council to find loopholes and excuses to maintain their grasp of power. It has been 50 years since then, and the Civilian Council has become more and more corrupted and powerful, so much so that they could affect the entire Konoha economy at will, causing all the shinobi wages and pays to stop. They have even learned a way to use the shinobi of Konoha to earn money. The sanin are known Kage-level shinobi throughout the lands. It is because of the sanin that multiple enemies have refrained from attacking Konoha. It is because of their reputation that many daimyo and minor village leaders that would pay a tremendous amount of money to hire any one of the sanin. This was also the reason that the Hokage was buried in paperwork. The Civilian Council members would take advantage of their influence in Konoha to help certain daimyo or leaders pass their mission request directly to the mission assigning faculty for a substantial amount of cash. After the defection of Orochimaru, the council members only had Jiraiya and Tsunade left to assign missions to, which increases the demand between each council member. That had already caused conflicts between several civilian families that owned seats on the Civilian Council. Now that the Hokage have assigned the 2 remaining sanin on a long-term mission, the Civilian Council members will no longer be able to maintain their usual cash flow, which may cause several families to be ruined due to the habit of heavy expenses that they have developed through time of wealth. Despite having to dealing with mountains worth of paperwork, this whole dilemma have benefited Konoha after all. In the near future, Konoha would have a Senju clan heir, one that might very well revive the Senju clan in Konoha. The Civilian Council would also lose quite an amount of financial power, leaving them vulnerable to the attacks of the Hokage and Shinobi Council, which, if succeeded, might gain back some of their authority back. As Sarutobi is begrudgingly grinding through his paperwork, he was interrupted by Hikari knocking on his office door. The Sandame let out a breath of relief as he beckoned her in. "Hokage-sama, I received this scroll from the messaging department. It was carried back by your personal carrier," stated Hikari. Sarutobi let out a breath of anxiety as he is handed the note. "Okay, thank you Hikari-chan, you are dismissed." Sarutobi waited until his assistant was outside until he slowly opened the envelope. It has been over 15 years since he's even heard from his sensei's wife. Sarutobi began to read the letter attached to the scroll. As he read, he was very glad that Mito had managed to rebuild a bit of Uzuakure and had even developed a bond with the survivors, despite their early death. Finally, at the end of the letter, he was very glad that Mito had gladly agreed to their proposal. Sarutobi sent a few ANBU to retrieve Jiraiya and Tsunade. Tsunade, Jiraiya, Shizen and Kakashi were having a nice meal together at a newly opened ramen stand, Ichiraka Ramen. The owner Tucci was a kind and talkative man, one that would make customers return with goodwill. "I've got to say, Tucci, your ramen is certainly the best ramen I've ever had," said Jiraiya as he continued to slurp on the broth. "The noodles and broth are both complementing each other perfectly. Truly amazing." "Yes, I agree. I am usually not a fan of ramen because of the oily broth, but your ramen is very light and your broth is very refreshing," said Tsunade with a smile. "I will definitely come back for more," finished the sanin as Kakashi and Shizen nodded in agreement. "Thank you for your kind compliments, Jiraiya-sama, Tsunade-sama," said Tucci with a smile. "I am very glad that such famous shinobi like yourselves enjoy my food." The 4 customers just smiled as they finished their ramen. A few sudden chakra signatures suddenly appeared behind Tsunade and Jiraiya. Looking back, they found an ANBU team looking for them. "Jiraiya-sama, Tsunade-sama, Hokage-sama has requested your audience." Tsunade and Jiraiya pretty much can assume that this was regarding the reply of Uzuakure. "Hi, we will be there shortly," replied Tsunade as the ANBU team nodded and left. The 2 sanin paid for their meals then left for the Hokage office, leaving Shizen and Kakashi alone. Shizen sighed and suddenly had on a somber expression as she saw her sensei and her sensei's fiancé leave. She could safely assume that the meeting was pertaining their leave. Even though that Shizen knew that leaving the village was the best bet for the 2 sanin, she could not help but feel left out. Tsunade had become a mother figure for her throughout the years and she doesn't want to be alone again. Kakashi, seeing Shizen's sudden mid-change, decides to ask, "Are you okay, Shizen?" Shizen looked up a little at the ANBU member and hesitantly replied, "I just feel like that I am losing my family all over again," somberly replied Shizen as she peered her sight from Kakashi. Kakashi sighed as he put a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Shizen, I know exactly how you feel, Jiraiya has become a full father figure for me, and I also feel like I am losing my family right now, but Tsunade reminded me that we will never be alone. They will return in a few years. They will not forget us or stop loving us, so you don't have to worry. Despite feeling better after his words, Shizen decided to express her feelings more. Thank you, Kakashi. But I still don't like be alone for the few years. It makes it even worse when I'm all alone in my home with no one there to welcome my return or ushering my goodbye. Shizen felt tears well up in her eyes as she spilled her feelings. Shizen was broken out of her sobbing as she felt someone wrap their arms around her frame. Looking up, she saw that Kakashi was hugging her. Temporarily forgetting her sadness, Shizen blushed. Kakashi is hugging me. Shizen started to breathe heavily as she let the boy continue to hug her as she gripped on his uniform. Over the years, Shizen had spent more time with Kakashi, mostly on mission with she as the medic of the team. She had healed him on multiple occasions, and she must admit that she was attracted to him. Shizen, you still have your friends. I can tell you from experience that it is not good to keep one's emotions at arm's length. Doing that would just slowly put one further into their own loneliness. Kakashi suddenly came up with an idea. Shizen? Kakashi nervously caught Shizen's attention. How about you move in with me? Finished Kakashi with a nervous expression. To say Shizen was shocked was an understatement. She would have had a million guesses and she would have never guessed that. I have no ulterior motives, I just thought that the both of us could benefit from this. It would seem like that we are still living with family. I would be there to welcome you home, tell you goodbye, and you could do the same for me, followed up Kakashi. So how about it? Shizen was contemplating the implications of living together with Kakashi. Sure, there might be rumors that will start, but it would be better than living alone in that big apartment. And Kakashi was right, it would be like living with family again, as their currently relationship was that similar to that of a brother and sister. I might need to think this over, but I would really like it if we lived together. It was then that the two teens noticed that they were still hugging each other. Faster than lightning they separate, with Kakashi with a little blush and Shizen with a face that resembles a tomato. Tucci had on a grin while he looked at the two shinobi, indicating that he might have heard what they said. The young Ambiyu stood up and cleared his throat. I have a mission, I'll see you later, okay? Asked Kakashi. Hi, whispered a red Shizen as Kakashi used Shunshin to leave the area, a soft smile decorating her face. Tsunade and Jiraiya had arrived at the Hokage office about 10 minutes ago. In that time the Hokage had showed them both the letter that Mito had sent them. Jiraiya was very glad that Tsunade was right about the fact that Mito would be happy to have them. He was also surprised about the deaths of the few Uzumaki survivors. It is quite a shame for such a powerful clan to dwindle down to such feeble numbers. All that was left of the pure blood Uzumaki were Uzumaki Mito and Uzumaki Kushina. Tsunade and their child were only part Uzumaki. Tsunade was saddened by the fact that some of her remaining relatives had died. But she was also quite glad that Kushina was born before her mother's death. That means the Uzumaki clan still had a chance of surviving. Kushina might also be a great friend for her child. Sensei, how much time would it take for you to gather to resources Mito-sama needs? Asked Jiraiya. It would take 1 day for me to gather the food and raw materials, so you two can leave the day after tomorrow. Hi, we will leave the day after tomorrow then. Dismissed Tsunade, and Jiraiya nodded and started towards the door. Enjoy your paperwork, Sensei, remarked Jiraiya as he left, making Sarutobi scowl at him and Tsunade giggle. It has been a day since Tsunade and Jiraiya received Mito's letter, and they had gathered all the material Mito requested. Jiraiya had sealed all the material into various scrolls, making it much easier to travel. Both Tsunade and Jiraiya were very excited about the trip. Tsunade would get to see her beloved grandmother after many years, as well as visit Uzuakure. Jiraiya was also very happy because it was during this trip that their baby will be born. They would officially be a family. Being an orphan himself, Jiraiya always wanted a family to call his own, and he would finally achieve his dream. Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shizen and Kakashi were having their last moment together for the next few years. The two sanin were very surprised when Kakashi told them that Shizen would be moving in with him. Even though Kakashi explained his reason to them, it did not stop Jiraiya from teasing the hell out of him. Saying things like, "Don't do anything I wouldn't," or, "Be sure to use protection." Tsunade also made sure that he didn't do any inappropriate to her surrogate daughter by threatening to castrate him with a spoon if she had become a surrogate grandmother when she came back. Of course, during the whole conversation, Shizen just remained quiet and constantly blushed at their phrases. It finally came the time for the two sanin to leave. Each giving Kakashi and Shizen a hug, they set out their journey to Uzumaki. Come back safely and soon, Tsunade, Ka-san, Kakashi prayed. I wish you have a happy and healthy baby, Tsunade-sama, prayed Shizen. It has been 36 hours since Jiraiya and Tsunade left Konoha. They had traveled at full speed, meaning that to most people, including most shinobi, would see nothing other than a blur or a whiz of sound when they passed them by. The reason for the high-speed travel was because that they cannot afford to be seen or somehow allow themselves to be tracked by anybody. The fact that Uzuakure still stand was a secret of great importance, because if the fact was leaked out, many shinobi villages of various lands would try to either destroy it entirely or try to steal any remaining ninjutsu or fuinjutsu scrolls. How much longer will it be until we arrive, Tsunade-chan? asked Jiraiya. According to the map, we should arrive at the borders of Uzuakure very shortly, replied Tsunade as she examined the map. The map the two are using is only a basic geological map that is commonly found and used by many. Thus, it is hard to pinpoint where exactly the recovered part of the village is. Mito couldn't include a map within her letter because she doesn't want to take the risk of someone intercepting the letter, despite the protection seal she put on it. Mito had encrypted a plan within the letter. She explained that she has a unique ability to sense the emotions of others. It was chakra sensory of the highest caliber. When Jiraiya and Tsunade arrive within 10 miles of Uzuakure, Mito would be able to sense their presence, and will come out to greet them back to the village. Jiraiya and Tsunade were looking out onto the horizon, showing many islands in the giant body of water of Uzuakure. Suddenly a shadow began to cover a line of the horizon. The closer the shadow got to the mainland, the more the shadow shifted to a human shape. Is that? Jiraiya said with squinted eyes. The shadow began to lighten as it showed long white hair following behind the person, and soon, the face of the person was revealed and it was Uzumaki Mito with a warm smile on her face. Tsunade could never forget the face of the woman that had taken care of her for most of her adolescent, and had taught her all that she knew about Fuinjutsu. The sanin felt a little guilty about letting her grandma live alone in Yuzu for so many years. She really must have missed her. Ba-chan, cried Tsunade as she ran towards Mito and gave her a giant hug. The Uzumaki leader smiled and opened her arms to her little girl. It is great to see you too, Tsu-chan, said a happy Mito as she gave Tsunade a motherly hug. Oh, I missed you, honey, whispered the elderly woman as she patted Tsunade on the head like she did when her granddaughter was a little girl. Jiraiya walked towards the pair with a smile on his face. It is great to see you again, Mito-sama, said the man with a bow. Mito broke the hug with her granddaughter as she looked at Jiraiya. Oh, Jiraiya-chan, just call me Ba-chan like Tsu-chan, we are family now. All three of them shared a smile before Mito leads the way to the village. The trio of ninja traveled by water through the many islands of Uzuakure. They are nearing the epicenter of the country. The group soon reached a large island right in the middle of the many surrounding islands. It has a natural barrier of tall stone walls surrounding its perimeter. This is Uzuakure. There is a giant gate at the lower middle of the wall. Jiraiya, Tsunade and Mito headed towards the gate, and the two sanin noticed that there was a very complex protection seal preventing the gate to be opened by foreigners. This is an incredible protection seal. I've never seen so many layers of protection, said a awed Jiraiya as he studied the seal. Despite being a seal master himself in Konoha standards, this level of Fuinjutsu is well above his league. Mito smiled as she answered, by overlapping so many seals to complement each other, it is no longer a protection seal, and it is a lock. Mito unsealed a scroll from her robes and revealed it to be another complex seal. This is the key to the village, and on this scroll is the method to unlock each layer of the seal that has been ordered specifically to match the seal on the village gate. Mito placed the scroll on the ground as she adds some chakra into the scroll. The seal on the scroll started to move off the paper and slowly moved and attached itself onto the seal on the gate. The two seals began to overlap into a perfect fit, exactly like a lock and a key. The entire gate began to glow blue, and slowly the gate opened itself. Tsunade and Jiraiya waited anxiously for the gate to open as they tried to peer into the village with their gaze. The two sanin were surprised when they saw the state of the village. All the ruins that should be littered around the area were all cleared away. Fully bloomed sakura trees and various plant life decorated the majority of the area. Farmlands and cattle's drives were spread amongst the outer rim of the area, and right in the middle of the village was a building that looks almost identical to the Senju clan compound. The main living building is a 2-story high Japanese-style complex that was painted with a light brown shade. There are several smaller houses in a similar fashion located at each corner of the compound. An intricately designed pond was put onto the yard of the compound. The water was very clear and it was filled with many koi fish, making many colors dance around in the water. Sakura trees and flower beds surrounded the pond, and a stone bridge connected the two sides of the big pond, and there is a big gazebo on the other side of the pond. Wow, Bachan, how did you guys manage to do this by yourselves? Asked an awed Tsunade. The few of us easily moved the ruins of the city various seals. We simply applied a large-scale storage seal to seal the rubble, then disposed of it. But before we did all that, we did salvage what we could in the remains of Uzuakure. In the end we managed to locate most of our jutsu. This compound was built using the resources from the ruins, and as you might have noticed, I designed it almost exactly like our home in Konoha. Jiraiya and Tsunade listened intently as Mito continued. We didn't know much about construction, so we casted a high-level genjutsu on some carpenters and construction workers to make them think that they are building this compound in Nami no Kuni, and hired them to build this compound. Finished Mito as the three entered the compound. Tsunade and Jiraiya were shown around the compound, and despite the size, all the available space were all used efficiently. There was a sizable library containing the Uzumaki scrolls, various training dojos spread among the interior. The overall theme of the place was of traditional Japanese architecture. The entire compound was made out of wood. Mito didn't have the majority of the compound painted as it created a memento of her last husband Hashirama. The trio reached the main living building and looked through the rooms. The two sanin chose a room at the end of the hall. The room had a sufficient size. It had its own balcony, large windows, large closet, and its own bathroom. A king-sized bed sat in the middle of the room attached to the back wall, and much to their delight, there was a beautiful yellow crib with a soft small mattress on it. It also had small animals sewn into it. "Bachan, that is a beautiful crib. I know our child would love it." "Thank you," said Tsunade with a smile. "You're welcome, dear. I made the crib myself," Mito said, glad that they liked the crib. "This is the second one I've made this year." "Oh, yes, I almost forgot. There is the Uzumaki heiress," said Jiraiya with remembrance. "Yes, would you two like to see her?" The couple nodded with a smile, wanting to see the baby girl. Mito led them to her own room, which was almost exactly like their room. Also on the side of Mito's bed was a similar crib, only this one was red, with an overall feminine feel. Inside the crib was an adorable baby. She had beautiful shining violet eyes, signs of Uzumaki red hair decorated her head. She was wearing a little pink whole-body outfit that looked very cozy and warm. "Oh, Kushi-chan, you woke up already. You usually sleep much longer. You want to meet our guests too, huh?" cooed Mito as Kushina giggled cutely. Tsunade slowly approached the crib, and looked down at the baby girl. "She is beautiful," thought the sanin as she smiled down at the little baby. "Bachan, can I hold her?" Mito nodded at her granddaughter. "Of course you can, Tsu-chan." With Mito's nod, Tsunade proceeded to scoop the girl into her arms. Kushina had a look of confusion on her face that made her look even more adorable. "Hello Kushi-chan, oh you are so cute," cooed Tsunade as she rubbed her face with Kushina's. Jiraiya looked on with a smile. He knew that Tsunade would be a great mother. He walked over to his fiancée and looked at the baby. She was indeed a very cute child. When Kushina looked up at Jiraiya, she began to giggle and reached for his white hair. Tsunade smiled as she handed the baby to Jiraiya, who gladly accepted the small bundle. Kushina grabbed onto his hair as Jiraiya hugged her, already feeling a connection to the precious girl. Mito looked at her granddaughter and grandson-in-law with a smile, and decides to voice her troubles. "Jiraiya, Tsunade," she said with a serious voice, making the other two look back at her with curiosity. "As you know, Kushina's parents had passed away already, and at my old age I won't be able to take care of her for very long. Can the two of you adopt her as your daughter?" Tsunade and Jiraiya were very surprised. They knew that the girl's parents were dead, but they never actually thought about adopting her. Tsunade looked down at the babe in her fiancé's arms. She looked so precious and cute. She already felt a connection with the baby girl when she held her, and they were technique-related. She looks at Jiraiya silently asking for his opinion. Jiraiya saw the look Tsunade gave him and started to contemplate him. Kushina was still hugging his frame and grasping onto his hair, already beginning to drift into sleep. Smiling, he would love it if she became his daughter, so he looked back at Tsunade and nodded with a smile. The two looked back at Mito with smile adorned on their faces and nodded. "I would love to have her as our daughter," replied a glad Jiraiya. Mito smiled, feeling extremely relieved that Kushina would have a complete family as she grew up. Tsunade looked down at her new daughter. "Kushi-chan, can you say Ka-chan?" Kushina only giggled and began to reach for her new mother. Time skip 8 months. It was a beautiful morning at Uzuakure. Birds were singing, wind set sail to the sakura leaves on the trees, and distant sounds of the waves graced the morning air. Tsunade was sitting on the balcony of her room holding Kushina to her chest as she breastfed her. Ever since she was pregnant, she began to produce breast milk, so ever since she adopted Kushina she started to feed her. And of course Jiraiya commented that she has enough to feed Kushina, their child, and sometimes him. "You sure are hungry today, Kushi-chan," said the woman happily down to her daughter. Kushina didn't reply, but instead she just stared at her mother with her big sparkling violet eyes. If Tsunade wasn't in a comfortable position, and if she wasn't 9 months pregnant, she would hug the living daylights out of the adorable girl. The girl was just the cutest baby, endless energy by day, and sweet little angel by night. Being a mother for Kushina really reminded her of the time when her little brother was alive. Nawaki was not so much younger than her, but he was one of the most childish people she knew. He was basically a big baby. The last 8 months has been the best days of Tsunade's life. She originally thought that being on this isolated land would be boring, but it was quite the contrary. She and Mito would often spend time together cooking and training. It was very nice to get reacquainted with her grandmother. It had been quite some time since Tsunade had been so close to nature. She had gotten used to the busy streets of Konoha and violent battlegrounds of war. The pregnancy had affected Tsunade's physical health. She felt weaker and more exhausted than normal, but Jiraiya had been very supportive and helpful during these months. He had also officially proposed to her by getting her a beautiful ring crafted at Mount Mayabuku, and also had been extremely handsome at their wedding ceremony, which had been the happiest time of her life. Short of their sensei, her entire family were there. They were the only people that mattered. Tsunade was due in a few days, and she had already taught Mito and Jiraiya what to do during her contraction, and they have set up a guest room to be a medical room. Tsunade felt someone wrap their arms on her shoulders and rested their chin on her head. "Tsu-chan, are you sure the morning wind wouldn't be harmful to the baby?" Tsunade looked over her shoulders to see her husband of 6 months and let out an amused sigh. "Jiraiya-kun, once again, I am the best medic in the world. I made sure to make my pregnancy to be as safe and healthy as possible, finished Tsunade as she gave him a kiss. Jiraiya broke the kiss to look down at his beloved daughter. Hey Kushi-chan, how is my princess doing today? Cooed Jiraiya as he scooped up his daughter from Tsunade. Kushina saw her father and began to chant Jiraiya would often play with Kushina, change her diapers and give her baths. Throughout the past few months Jiraiya had fallen in love with the little ball of energy. Oh, she can almost say daddy, said an excited Jiraiya, while a slightly peeved Tsunade looked on. She can't even pronounce ma, whined Tsunade as Jiraiya hid a smirk from his wife. Oh, don't worry, Naruto will probably say mommy first. Tsunade decided to check the gender of the baby a few months ago, and the results turned out to be a boy. Once again Tsunade had lost a bet. Their child was officially Senju Naruto. Their nice conversation was interrupted when Tsunade felt a sudden unfamiliar sensation. She looked down and saw that her water just broke. Jiraiya, my water just broke, cried Tsunade loudly as her eyes widened and quickly grabbed onto her husband. Jiraiya's eyes widened comically as he digested what is going on. My Kami, let's get to the medical room. Jiraiya picked up Tsunade gently as he speed walked to the medic room and created a Kage Bunshin to find Mito. They soon reached the medical room and Jiraiya laid Tsunade down as Tsunade began to time her contractions and breathing. Jiraiya did as he was taught by his wife. He attacked an I.V to Tsunade and began to guide her with her breathing tempo. Jiraiya's Kage Bunshin found Mito in the garden and told her the urgent news. What? Cried the elderly woman. Okay, then let's get going, yelled Mito as she used Shunshin to get there faster. Mito and Jiraiya were on each of Tsunade's side as she was ready to expel her womb. Damn you Jiraiya, you did this to me. Jiraiya is yelling in agony as his hand is crushed by his wife with superhuman strength. He reinforced his hand with chakra as he stroked Tsunade's face as he coached her breathing. Mito was in front of Tsunade's vagina as she started to push the baby out. Come on Tsunade-chan, push! Tsunade pushed every time she exhaled a breath, and the baby was slowly coming out. Come on Tsunade-chan, the head is already out, just a few more seconds. Tsunade gritted her teeth in pain as she gave the rest of her strength into one push, and in just a flash, Senju Naruto was born, and landed directly into his great-grandma's arms. Mito was ecstatic as she looked down at the newborn. It truly was a miracle of life. Wahaya, came a wail, and then a boy with bright beautiful blue eyes came into view of Jiraiya. To say Jiraiya was happy would be an understatement. It was the first time he saw his own son, and he immediately fell in love with the crying bundle. The baby was a healthy little boy. Mito noticed that the baby weighed about 8 pounds, and based on his loud cries, he had a very powerful set of lungs. Oh, let me see him, said an out-of-breath Tsunade. Smiling, Mito wrapped Naruto in a little blue blanket and brought him to his mother. Right when Mito handed over the crying babe over to Tsunade, the baby stopped crying and looked up at his mother with his big blue eyes. Tsunade had tears of joy streaming down her face as she held her son close to her face, planting a few kisses on his face. Jiraiya kneeled down near his wife and son and wrapped his arm around his family. He kissed Tsunade on the lips lovingly and whispered in her ear, "Thank you Tsunade-heim." Tsunade kissed her husband back and caressed his battered hand with a regrettable expression. Jiraiya waved it off by hugging Tsunade and Naruto together lovingly, very happy that he finally have a family of his own. Mito also had tears streaming down her face. She was very happy that Tsunade finally have a happy family of her own. Taking a camera out of some seal, she quickly took dozens of pictures of the new family. At the end, they took over 100 pictures which included every member of their small happy family. And as the cover of their family album was a picture of a sleeping Naruto hugging a sleeping Kushina in a crib. Tsunade, Jiraiya, Mito and the 2 babies were all sitting around the dinner table. It was Kushina's 1-year birthday, and the little girl was extra energetic and happy, especially when she had to blow out the candle. It had been 6 months since Naruto was born, and since then the 2 babes had always been together. Kushina would even start crying whenever Naruto wasn't beside her when they sleep, so the parents just decided to put them in the same crib, in Mito's room. Kushina and Naruto were both sitting beside each other in their own high chairs. They just finished having Kushina's birthday cake and they both have some leftover frosting on their cheeks. While the 3 adults were eating and conversing, the 2 babies had nothing to do. Kushina reached over to poke Naruto on his little face, making Naruto look at her and express a giggle. Hee 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 ba ba ba, said little Naruto as he clapped his little hands together. Kushina poked his face again, making her now shoulder-length red hair frame her face. Kushina's hair apparently attracted the attention of Naruto as he began to reach for it. Tsunade managed to catch it and attempted to stop Naruto because she was afraid that he would pull Kushina's hair, but to her surprise Naruto grabbed her hair and began to play with it. Naruto entwined Kushina's red locks around his small fingers. He had always found the shade of red to be really pretty. Tsunade smiled as she spoke up. "I'll look at that. Naruto-chan likes Kushi-chan's hair," chirped the mother as she found the scene to be adorable. Jiraiya looked at the scene and couldn't help but feel touched at the sight. He had never seen 2 babies so close to each other. They usually don't have enough mental thought to make friends at that age. To the side, Mito observed the scene with a hopeful expression. The two babies were the heir and heiress of the Senju and Uzumaki clans, and if they were to fall in love with each other, it would be like history was repeating itself. Even though they have the same parents, they were not related by blood, so it would be okay if they were to marry. Of course, Mito herself was a bit biased as she and her husband was also an Uzumaki and Senju couple. The thought has also crossed the mind of Tsunade more than once. Being an expert of the human body and behavior, she also has a proficient amount of knowledge pertaining human development, and she knows that two babies should not act like that. Normally two babies that close in age should act territorial with each other regarding the attention of the parents, but the two babies were seemingly closer to each other than with their parents. The movement of her hair was tickling Kushina's face, making her laugh. Ha 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 ha. She grabbed Naruto's hands with her own little chubby fingers and stopped him from tickling her face. The two started to giggle at each other, and Kushina refused to let go of Naruto's hands as she doesn't want Naruto to tickle her anymore. Naruto didn't mind that Kushina was holding onto his hand. It felt really warm, so much so that he began to feel sleepy and let out a yawn. Mito saw it as a window of opportunity. She stood up to pick up Naruto to put him to bed, but Kushina was still holding on to his hand, so before anyone could separate them, she made a Kage bunshin to hold Kushina so she can carry both babies to bed while they are still holding each other's hands. Jiraiya was oblivious to what Mito is trying to do. Tsunade on the other hand had a slight clue on what her Bachan was trying to do. It was not that she was against Naruto and Kushina possibly getting together in the future. Quite on the contrary, actually, she also thought that it would be great if the two would end up together, the main benefit being that the Senju and Uzumaki clan would be combined. I'm going to put these two to bed first, it has been a long day for them, said Mito as she held the two babes. Okay, thank you Bachan, I think we will turn in too, said a horny Jiraiya, trying to speed up time so he can have a good time with his wife. Tsunade also nodded at her husband's words. She was glad that her Bachan might employ her own matchmaking plan, and she was also quite eager for a long night with her husband. The married couple left the room as Mito started to trek up to her room. When she arrived at her room, Mito laid Naruto and Kushina inside their crib and found that the two were already asleep. Both of them were still grasping the other's hand. Finding this to be extremely cute and a good sign, Mito began to take another legion of pictures of her favorite subject. The morning birds were chirping gleefully outside of the compound, and it woke Mito up from her beauty sleep. As she woke up, she was surprised to find out that she managed to sleep through the entire night. Usually either Naruto or Kushina would wake her up from their crying. She was wondering about the state of the babies, so she stood and walked over to their crib to check on them. Mito was pleasantly surprised to see that the Naruto and Kushina were both still sleeping peacefully with small smiles on their faces. Of course, their hands were still connected, and it seems that in the middle of the night, the kids too shifted closer to each other so their foreheads were lightly touching each other. Knowing the scene will make a great picture, she began to take dozens of pictures so she can pick the best one. Mito was broken out of her photo-taking frenzy when the voice of Tsunade broke her out of her stupor. Hey Bachan, taking pictures again, said an amused Tsunade. Oh, come over here Tsuchan, they look so cute right now, whispered Mito lightly, trying to not wake the adorable pair up. Tsunade peered closer to her son and adopted daughter, and couldn't help but smile at the lovely sight. Bachan, if they are not babies, I might think that you are trying to get them to be together, asked Tsunade, testing the waters. Tsuchan, as a medic of your caliber, you certainly see something different about those two. Normal babies wouldn't be this close to each other, said Mito as she smiled down at her two sweethearts. They might share the same parents, but they are not real siblings, so there is nothing wrong if they are to love each other romantically. Tsunade couldn't help but to nod at her Bachan's words as she replied, there is something different about these two, and I certainly would not mind if they were to date each other when they are older, but they are still babies. We are thinking at least 15 years ahead even if they are to develop romantic feelings with each other. Mito merely nodded her head, slightly disappointed that she might not live long enough to see the two of her little darlings get together. But she knows that even if they were together it would take a long time, and any pushing from her or the parents might cause negative results. 5 years later, two people were running around a training field with ample space all around them. It was a beautiful morning and the sun casted a warm glow upon the two children playing tag with each other. The birds were singing happily in the trees, and together with the wind blowing against the tree leaves, it played a soft melody that made the peaceful morning even more serene. In the isolated solitude of the new Uzuakure, Jiraiya and Tsunade passed 5 years of peace, and it had been the happiest time of their lives. Parenthood was treating the two sanin quite well. Both of them were thrilled to see their son and daughter develop and grow right in front of their eyes. There was nothing like it, to actually see a part of them shape and form into an individual person. It was truly a miracle of life. It was disconcerting for the two sanin to not go on any missions for the last 5 years. That had never happened since they had become ninja. Jiraiya couldn't help but wonder about the situation of Konoha. Since they were living in secret, the communication between Konoha and Yuzu had been limited to 1 letter every 3 months. Despite the slight worry of Konoha, the two sanin were greatly enjoying their new life of peace and solitude. They were more than happy that they no longer have to fight in any war. Uzumaki Mito was also having the time of her extremely long life with her family. She was very happy that her final years, she will be spending her time with her little Naruto and Kushina. The little Senju and Uzumaki greatly reminded Mito of her own childhood with Hashirama. The elderly Uzumaki had met her late husband ever since she was a girl at the age of 8. Their two clans were having a celebration together after a great battle, and it was the first time Mito danced with a boy. The Kami no Shinobi at the time was just a little boy, and his cheerful personality really made Mito happy. It was times of war and slaughter, so everybody was mostly somber and stressful all the time, but Hashirama had brought her inner happiness to the surface. Naruto's own happy personality reminded Mito of the Shodai Hokage, and she hoped that her little great-grandson will turn out to be a great person and ninja like his great-grandfather. Tsunade was resting into her husband's frame as they sat of a couple of lawn chairs as they watched their children play with each other. The blonde woman had a smile on her face as she snuggled deeper into her lover's chest. "They sure are having a lot of fun," said the female sanin with amusement. Jiraiya chuckled and held his wife tighter. "Yeah, but they play tag every day. How are they not bored of it yet?" Tsunade giggled. "Who cares about that? They are running so much every day, it is basically training them for their future shinobi arts." Kushina had grown quite a bit in the last 5 years. The girl now had long red hair that reached down to her lower back, and was about 3 feet tall, which was normal for a little girl her age. The girl was a happy and energetic ball of sunshine that really brought a lot of happiness into her family. Kushina had the most contagious smile. Every time she laughs or have giggles, it would make all the people around her smile as well, especially Naruto. The Senju heir had also grown a lot in his first 5 years. Like his father, his hair was wild and spiky, but it was blonde like his mother. The boy's hair had grown to a shoulder length with 2 twin bangs framing the cease of his face, and he had a small ponytail that was not unlike his father's. Both Jiraiya and Tsunade had brown eyes, but Naruto had a pair of bright blue eyes that will light up the area. He had gotten it from his paternal grandmother, and Jiraiya loves them. Typical of a boy his age, Naruto was a fun-loving and energetic child much like Kushina, and they two had become the best of friends. Tsunade and Jiraiya had noticed that Naruto and Kushina were not acting like normal siblings should act with each other, they were more like best friends. Neither of them had ever been territorial to each other, and had never once competed for the attention of their parents, or great-grandmother. The two kids will almost spend every hour of the day together. They were like 2 pieces of a puzzle, completely inseparable. "Come on, Naruto, you are supposed to catch me, remember?" cried Kushina as she looked back at the boy. Naruto smiled. "Okay then, here I come, Kushi-chan," said the young boy as he ran as fast as he could and quickly caught up to Kushina. The boy was unusually fast for his age, and his parents had clearly noticed it. As the son of 2 sanin and a member of the famed Senju clan, Naruto's natural talent was to be expected, but sometimes his parents thought that it was a bit over the top. Tsunade and Jiraiya wanted their children to have a fun and peaceful childhood, so they refrained from teaching Naruto and Kushina too much, but they were still surprised at what Naruto could already do. Jiraiya had taught his 2 kids how to activate their chakra and some simple shuriken jutsu. Kushina had encountered some common difficulties that most people experience, but she had gotten over them quite quickly. Naruto, on the other hand, was entirely different. He basically took on the lessons like a fish in water. Naruto needed no practice or even a second try, and he struck all the intended targets with his shuriken. There was also his chakra. Naruto will always remember and be amused at the faces his parents made when he first activated his chakra. Naruto had an insane amount of chakra for a boy at the age of 4. It was already on par with a senior genin. Naruto smiled as he wrapped his arms around Kushina. "Caught you!" exclaimed the little boy as he hugged his adopted sister. Kushina pouted as her back was pulled against Naruto's chest. "Oh, you caught me again, Databane," whined the girl as she crossed her arms. "I never beat you at anything." The Senju boy frowned at hearing Kushina's sad voice. "Hey, don't be sad, Kushi-chan," said Naruto as he turned Kushina in his arms to face him, but she still had a frown in her face. Naruto suddenly had a grin on his face. "Come on, Kushi-chan, smile!" exclaimed the boy as he suddenly tickled Kushina's sides. Kushina bursted into a series of giggles as she tried to wiggle out of Naruto's hold. "And Nara," muttered Kushina as she continued to giggle and laugh. Stop!" exclaimed the girl as she brushed Naruto's hands away and wrapped her arms around him to hold him in place. "That's cheating, Naruto." Naruto was also laughing heartily as he looked down into Kushina's violet eyes. "Who cares, I got you laughing, didn't I?" Kushina was also a young child that was talented, but she was in a different field than Naruto. Like most other Uzumakis her age, she had great talent in Fuinjutsu. Even Mito had recognized it. At the tender age of 5, Kushina already had the calligraphy skills of a fully grown person. Kushina also had very delicate and controlled chakra control, something that she was much better at than Naruto. Mito had found out that Kushina had very special chakra. It was very strong. The nature of Kushina's chakra was not like anything Mito had ever seen. It was not very powerful or potent, but its tensile strength was amazing. If normal chakra acted like strings when stretched, Kushina's acted like chains. Due to her special chakra, Kushina was extremely talented in using Fuinjutsu. With her chakra, the seals she creates will be even more powerful than normal. Tsunade had also taken notice that Kushina's chakra also had the potential to make her and very good medic, mainly because of her almost perfect chakra control. Okay, settle down, kids, said Jiraiya as he walked up his two children with a smile on his face. Kushina unwrapped her arms around Naruto and ran to her father. Hey Tu-chan! Cried the girl happily as she jumped into her father's arms. Jiraiya chuckled and lifted his daughter into his arms. Hey Kushina-chan, said the sanin as he kissed his daughter's cheek. Are you two ready for your training? Naruto smiled and walked up to his father with a nod. Of course we are, Tu-chan. What are we learning today? Tsunade walked up to her husband and children with a smile on her face. It was the day when Jiraiya and Tsunade decided to officially start training Naruto and Kushina in specific fields instead of basic techniques. Since the children were 4, they had learned from their parents about the basic jutsus, such as the Kawarimi no Jutsu, Bunshin no Jutsu, and the Henji no Jutsu, and they have pretty much mastered them. It was a wonder of the two Sanin's mind as to why the academy back in Konoha needed to wait so many years before teaching the students such simple jutsus. Today is different, started Tsunade as she placed her hands on her hips. Today is the start of a new 2 years training program. Naruto was confused. 2 years? Inquired the boy as Kushina in her father's arms listened in. Jiraiya nodded. Yes, starting today we are going to train the two of you in serious shinobi arts, and the two of you will choose what you want to learn. Kushina wrapped her arm around her dad's neck. So we choose what we can learn. Tsunade smiled at her little girl and kissed her on the cheek. Yes, sweetie, do you have anything you want to learn in particular? Asked the kind mother, inwardly testing her children. The two sanin had been teaching their children the theory behind each shinobi arts as well, and they wanted to see if the kids would be able to decide which field will be most beneficial for them. Kushina tilted her head to the side. I remember Bachan saying that my chakra will be very useful for drawing seals, so I want to learn Fuinjutsu. Chirped the cute girl. But I also want to learn medical ninjutsu from Ka-chan. Tsunade smiled at her little girl. Sure thing, sweetie. Jiraiya was glad that Kushina made the right choices and looked down at his son. What about you, Naruto? What do you want to learn? The Senju heir crossed his arms and thought. I think I should learn offensive ninjutsu and taijutsu. I know I have large chakra reserves, so I want to take full advantage of that and become a combat ninja. Explained Naruto looking at his family. And I really want to learn Ka-chan's superhuman strength. It is really cool. Jiraiya ruffled his son's hair and nodded. Good, you both made some good choices, said the man as he placed Kushina down on the ground next to Naruto. Okay then, starting tomorrow Naruto will be learning ninjutsu from me in the morning, and taijutsu with Ka-chan in the afternoon, said the white-haired sanin to his son before he looked over at his daughter. Kushina-chan will be learning medical ninjutsu in the morning with Ka-chan, and Fuinjutsu with Bachan in the afternoon. Kushina and Naruto both grinned at each other and nodded. Hi! 2 years later, two shadows danced around in the main training field of the second Senju compound, and many clashes were heard within the dust cloud that had been created from all the high-speed movements. One of the two people fighting within the area was Jiraiya of the Sanin. The man really hadn't aged too much in the last few years. He had a rather youthful appearance despite being in his 40s already. Jiraiya and the other shadow was engaged in a round of taijutsu, and the Sanin was moving at a pace that would be hard for most Chunin to follow. Not bad, Naruto, but you must be more agile with your tight turns. Use your chakra to further enhance your grip to the ground, lectured Jiraiya as he parried another series of punches from his son. Naruto grunted as his father blocked his punch directly, and he felt a little pain in his muscles. Hi Tu-chan! The Senju heir continued to assault his father with a series of rapid punches and kicks. He was still a lot shorter than his dad, so he sometimes had to jump up in order to aim for his face. Naruto was using the taijutsu form that his mother had taught him, which was a traditional Senju taijutsu that was learned by all Senju clan members back in the day. Naruto had mastered the style in the last year, and his mother was really proud of him because of it. Naruto saw that his father was using his Yususul Kawazakumite, which was a style that really focuses on creating blind spot for the opponent and strike hard when unexpected. Naruto had tried to figure out any sort of holes or flaws in his father's style, but as a Sanin, his father was too experienced to make any mistakes like that. After sparring with his dad for the last few months, Naruto had begun to notice what his father would do whenever he was about to create a blind spot. He would always brush the back of his hand close to his opponent's face. The same thing was happening. Jiraiya moved the back of his hand near Naruto's face, and the younger fighter forced his own eyes to not follow the hand. As soon as the hand passed his face, Naruto threw a hard punch at his father's midsection, and it connected. Naruto's fist was filled with chakra when he was about to strike, and the instant his punch made contact, Naruto released all that chakra at once, creating one of the superhuman punches that his mother had taught him to use. Jiraiya's face contorted into a painful expression as he was sent backwards into a tree. The force was so great that his body broke through the tree and landed against a large boulder several meters after. Naruto had a smile on his face as he watched his father's body suddenly disappear in a puff of white smoke. Naruto turned around and pumped his fists into the air. Yada! Cried the boy. I finally defeated one of Tu-chan's Kage Bunshin. Jiraiya jumped down from the tree he was standing on and smiled at his son. Good job, Gaki. Your taijutsu has improved a lot, complimented the father, as he ruffled his son's hair. The Senju heir had a grin on his face, and gave his dad a thumbs up. Thank you Tu-chan, Ka-chan really worked me to the ground with her training. Naruto had really grown in the last 2 years. He was already up to Jiraiya's chest in height. His blonde hair was actually cut shorter so it only reached the top of his neck, but he still had his jaw-length bangs framing the sides of his face. Because of his vigorous training regimen, Naruto had quite a muscular build for his age. He was wearing a mesh armor shirt and black combat pants. He also had a headband on his forehead with the Senju clan symbol on it. It belonged to the Shodai Hokage before he founded Konoha. Mito had always treasured it, and she decided to give it to Naruto as if passing on Hashirama's will to him. It was been 2 years since Naruto had started to learn the true skills of a shinobi from his parents, and he had been doing very well. At the mere age of 7, Jiraiya could say that Naruto is strong, if not stronger than most of the Chunin in Konoha. Jiraiya had a great time training his son. Naruto enjoyed learning ninjutsu so much that it didn't even seem like training. The Senju heir was a genius when it comes to shinobi arts, and the two sanin as well as Mito had recognized that, but he also had the determination and guts that made his father proud. The Gamma sanin was really proud of his son, and couldn't help but think that Naruto is in fact the child of prophecy that he had been searching for his whole life. When compared to the previous students of the sanin, Naruto was superior to all of them. Kakashi was known as the ingenious son of the Shiroi Kiba that graduated the academy at the age of 5. But in terms of sheer talent and potential, even the great Sharingan no Kakashi did not measure up to Naruto. Then there were Nagato, Yahiko and Konan, the 3 orphans that Jiraiya had found in Amigakure. Yahiko and Kanan were talented, but it was nothing extraordinary. It was Nagato that held extreme potential. Jiraiya had great faith in the red-haired boy mainly because he possessed the Fable Rinnegan, but the boy's timid nature held him back from achieving his full potential. If Nagato was still alive, Jiraiya was willing to bet that Naruto would eventually be even more powerful than him. Hey Tu-chan, I'm going to take a shower, see you later at dinner, exclaimed the boy happily as he used the Shunshin no Jutsu to travel back into the clan home. Jiraiya chuckled at his little boy. He couldn't help but feel excited about Naruto's bright future as a Konoha shinobi. Naruto striped out of his sweaty and battered clothes and jumped into his personal shower. The boy was sore all over because of his training with his father, but his happiness overpowered the pain he felt throughout his body. He had been trying to defeat a Kage Bunshin of his father for the past week, and he had finally done it. Naruto was really feeling that all his hard work was paying off. He was getting stronger and stronger. For the last 2 years Naruto had been training every day with his parents till he could gain power. He promised himself 2 years ago that he would get stronger, so that he could protect his precious people. Flashback on. Naruto was having some tea with his bachan, just enjoying the casual afternoon inside of the house. The young Senju had always had an interest about learning to brew tea like his bachan. He didn't know how she did it, but her tea was always heavenly. I love your tea bachan, it is so good, exclaimed the boy as he grinned cheekily at his great-grandmother. Mito smiled and patted Naruto's head. Thank you Naruto-chan, you are such a sweet boy, said the elderly kind woman. So how has your training been going? Are you learning a lot from your Tu-chan and Ka-chan? Asked Mito with a smile. Naruto nodded. It's been going great, the things Ka-chan and Tu-chan are teaching me are so cool, chirped the young Senju heir with a smile. But some of the theory and meditation are a bit boring. The Uzumaki leader chuckled and wrapped an arm around her great-grandson's shoulders. Those things may be boring, but they will make you a smarter shinobi. Even your great-grandfather had to learn those things. Naruto perked up at the mention of Senju Hashirama. He had always been fascinated by his great-grandfather. Really, and it made Gigi stronger. Mito smiled at the child's innocence. Of course it did. Gigi was the most powerful shinobi of his time, and he had read every single book inside the Senju library, said the elderly lady as she thought back to her husband. At first your Gigi was very childish and hated reading, but after he tried his first book, he couldn't stop until he finished all the books he could find, and it made him a very smart shinobi. Naruto smiled at Mito's words. He was very happy that his Gigi was such a powerful shinobi. Gigi is so cool. When I grow up I want to be just like him. Mito chuckled in amusement, but also felt very happy inside. Your Gigi was a great man in shinobi. It is a good role model to look after, said his bachan. But do you know why your Gigi was so strong? The young Senju shook his head. No, he muttered. Was it because of his really cool Mokutan jutsu? The elderly woman shook her head. No, those jutsu did make your Gigi very strong, but what really made him stronger than all other ninja was that he was training so he could protect the people precious to him. He always said, the true strength of a shinobi will only emerge when they are protecting someone precious to them, said Mito as she looked at her little Naruto. Do you have someone really precious to you, Naruto-chan? Naruto was silent for a few seconds before a large smile appeared on his face. Of course I do, exclaimed the boy. Bachan, Tu-chan, Ka-chan and Kushi-chan are all very precious to me, listed Naruto as he looked back up at Mito with a more serious face. Exactly like Gigi. I will train to become strong so I can protect all of you, I promise. Mito could see that Naruto possessed the same will that her husband had, and she really hoped that Naruto would become an even greater man than Hashirama. Flashback end. Naruto was finished with his shower and was just drying himself off while he thought about his promise to his great-grandmother. Thinking back to that moment, Naruto remembered that the first person that he thought of when Mito asked him about his precious people was Kushina. Ever since he was a toddler, Naruto had been close to Kushina. They have the closest bond within the family, and she is Naruto's most precious person. Mito's words had changed Naruto's view of becoming stronger. Instead of wanting to do cool things and to show off, Naruto trains to become stronger so he could protect Kushina from any sort of harm. It was thanks to his feelings for Kushina that Naruto pushed through all the challenges of his training faster than he himself would have believed. He would never let her be hurt. Naruto put on a pair of dark blue jeans, a casual black mesh shirt, and a pair of black combat boots. All his think about Kushina made him want to see her, so Naruto started his way to the training hall that his mother was using to train Kushina. It was about sunset, so his Kachan should be finished with training already, and Naruto hoped that he would catch Kushina still practicing her medical jutsu. Kushina had also came a long way since 2 years ago. She had completed most of the rudimentary Fuinjutsu training that Mito had given her. The skills Kushina had with Fuinjutsu was already on par with most of the Fuinjutsu specialists in Konoha, as the Uzumaki seals were really superior to any other form. Mito was determined to teach Kushina all that she knew about Uzumaki Fuinjutsu, so that Kushina could continue to teach her children the knowledge of their lost clan. Tsunade had also been hammering Kushina with many different books of medicine and herbs, and the young girl had memorized all the things her mother had taught her. Kushina's naturally tuned chakra control made her a medical ninja with tremendous potential. Tsunade might even say that Kushina will be on par with Shizen in a few years. Naruto walked into the training hall and smiled when he saw Kushina still practicing her Shozen Jutsu. The young Uzumaki had grown in the last few years. She was only 2 inches shorter than Naruto. Her beautiful red hair was kept at waist length, and she usually tied it into a single ponytail whenever she was healing something. Kushina was the one that Naruto usually goes to whenever he needed medical treatment. She was skilled enough to treat any sort of wound that he could get from sparring with his father and mother. Naruto grinned as he stood around the corner from Kushina, and bit his thumb lightly. He rubbed some blood on his palm and channeled some chakra to his hand. Kuchio's no jutsu, whispered Naruto as he pressed his hand on the ground, and to his ever amusement, a small toad dropped onto Kushina's head. Kushina snapped the pen she was holding as a tick mark appeared on her forehead. How many times do I have to tell you to not do that? Cried Kushina as she turned around and glared at Naruto. The senju walked into the open and chuckled when he saw Kushina's angry face, mainly because the toad was still on her head. I really don't know, I lost count a year ago. Ever since Jiraiya let Naruto sign the contract for the toads, Naruto would occasionally summon a small toad on top of Kushina's head just to piss her off. The Uzumaki girl boinked the toad lightly to send it back with a puff of smoke, and continued to glare at Naruto. Can you please stop playing like that, Naruto? It is getting really annoying, cried the girl as she waved her fist at the boy. Naruto chuckled and walked up to Kushina. You just look so cute. Whenever I do that I couldn't help it. Kushina blushed a little and smacked Naruto lightly on the chest. Whatever, just don't do it when I am trying to finish my jutsu, said the girl before she turned around again to work on reviving 8 dead fishes at the same time. Naruto stood beside Kushina and watched her channel her chakra into the dead fishes, and a few seconds later, all of them started to move. Kushina smiled and clapped her hands together in happiness. She had been trying to expand the range of her Shozen Jutsu, and she did it. I did it, Naruto, chirped the girl as she smiled over at Naruto. Naruto loved it whenever Kushina would smile. It would make him feel happy also. Good job, Kushi-chan, said the boy as he grabbed Kushina's hand. Let's go, I want to spend some time with you. Kushina just followed her best friend and brother with a smile on her face, also wanting to spend some time with him. Naruto was sitting on a tall branch of a large tree and rested his back against the trunk. The young senju had just finished his daily training session with his father and was just taking a break before he had to go back inside for dinner. It had been a full 2 years since Naruto first started to train under his father in ninjutsu and his mother in taijutsu, and it was almost time to choose another 2 subjects to focus on. Naruto sighed and closed his eyes. What should I choose? Whispered the man to himself as his body slumped further down against the trunk of the tree. After being trained for 2 years by his parents, Naruto was effectively as strong as most chunin in Konoha, and he was still a young child. Tsunade was often surprised at the level of skill her son possessed. It was unnaturally advanced. Orochimaru was considered to be one of the most talented shinobi to be born in Konoha, but Naruto's natural aptitude outshone even the ex-sanin. Tsunade had worked Naruto to the ground with her taijutsu training. Sometimes her son will even pass out from exhaustion, but Naruto never once complained about it. The female sanin could see the sheer determination of her son through his eyes. Naruto really wanted to get as strong as he could get. At the start of the 2-year training program, Naruto's chakra control was basically non-existent, due to his extremely large chakra reserves, but after being run to the ground with chakra control exercises, he was almost on par with Kushina. Maybe I should try Fuinjutsu? Whispered Naruto once again to himself, as he opened his eyes and played with a leaf in his hands. Naruto had seen Mito train Kushina in Fuinjutsu before, and it seemed very interesting, especially when Kushina managed to seal an enormous boulder into a tiny scroll effortlessly. The only thing holding Naruto back was that he wanted to explore more into the fields of offensive ninjutsu and taijutsu, and he wondered if he could repeat the subjects and just learn more about both fields. As the boy was thinking, something red caught his eyes. Looking to the side, he found a ripe apple hanging onto a branch. Naruto smiled and plucked it from the tree and sniffed it happily. The senju took a bite out of the fruit and found that it was very juicy and ripe. It was so delicious he finished the large apple in under a minute. Naruto had no idea why, but no matter what tree he chooses to relax in, for some reason there will always be some ripe fruit growing on the tree, but when he just searches for them by walking around, he could never find any. I really like this tree, muttered Naruto as he plucked a green leaf from a branch and held it in front of his nose. The young senju had always loved nature, and would always spend hours on end on a tree. He had no idea why, but trees always had a peculiar effect of calming him. No matter how tried he was, sitting in a tree will always make him feel relaxed and serene. Naruto held the leaf in his hand as he channeled some chakra near it, and in a split second, an invisible blade of wind cut through the leaf. A few months ago Jiraiya had tested Naruto for his natural chakra elements, and much to the sanin's surprise, his son had strong aptitude in 3 elements, Futon, Suiton, and Doton. Such phenomenon never happens to a child that was under the age of 10, it was really some miraculous. Jiraiya could only train Naruto on Doton and Suiton, but he had no knowledge about Futon, so he acquired some scrolls inside the Uzumaki library about wind manipulation and had Naruto teach himself. Naruto admitted to himself that Futon was a much harder element to control compared to his other 2, but he managed to get it down. Naruto had trained himself to the point where he could use his wind chakra to fight on the battlefield, and he was starting to get used to using Futon jutsus. Naruto let his trained of the wander around his consciousness as he laid down fully on the wide branch. He was a little tired from all his training and thought that a nap would be nice. His thoughts trailed to his eventual return to Konoha. His parents had always told him and Kushina that they will one day return to Konoha and start a new life there. Naruto had learned everything about Konoha from his studies, and he had grown to be excited about going back to his real home, but it was still mostly unknown to him. The young senju had learned many lessons from reading about the many battles his ancestors went through, and he knew that he had a lot to live up to. He was the descendant of the most powerful shinobi of recorded history, Senju Hashirama, and the Nidaime Hokage Senju Tobirama. Not to mention that his parents were also revered as 2 of the most powerful shinobi to be alive in the current era. If Naruto really wanted to make his family proud, he must become stronger than all of them. This is so comfy, mumbled Naruto half asleep. Naruto was enjoying his light nap. He could already feel his chakra reserves replenish and his muscles loosen. It was nearing sundown, so there was a soft wind that blew through the area and it made the temperature just perfect for a little nap. But suddenly, Naruto felt something really slimy land on his face. The senju heir jumped up from his sleep and quickly wiped the goo on his face. Naruto knew exactly what happened. He looked down and saw the little slug that was crawling on his face and boinked it on the head to send it back to its summoning world. Naruto's body was shivering from the disgusting feeling of having something so slimy crawl all over his face, and he looked down to see Kushina laughing on the ground, clutching her stomach and rolling around. Naruto wanted to be mad, but Kushina was just too adorable at the moment. The boy channeled some earth chakra to his hands and clapped them together. Doton, Dorihiki, whispered Naruto as the earth underneath Kushina suddenly sprung up like a wall, and projected the laughing girl into the air. Naruto jumped down to the ground and caught Kushina in his arms, and the girl was still laughing heartily as she wiggled around in her best friend's arms. Kushina wiped a tear from an eye and looked up at Naruto. Why, you were so shocked! Exclaimed the girl between giggles. It was so funny, haha, yeah it is so funny, mumbled Naruto sarcastically as he made his way into his home while carrying Kushina in his arms. The girl crossed her arms and smirked victoriously at Naruto. Well, now you know how I feel when Gamakichi suddenly lands on my head, stated Kushina as she nodded her head. Well, that was a lot more fun than I expected. I was just coming out here to tell you that dinner is ready. Naruto smiled down at the girl and nodded. Okay, he said before his demeanor turned a bit more serious. Hey Kushi-chan, have you decided what 2 subject you want to study for the next 2 years? Kushina smiled and nodded. Yep, I am going to study taijutsu with Ka-chan, and learn more Fuinjutsu from Ba-chan and Tu-chan, chirped the girl happily. What about you, Narukun? The senju thought over his choices for the last time before he smiled down at the girl. I'm going to keep learning offensive ninjutsu from Tu-chan, and start learning Fuinjutsu from Ba-chan and Tu-chan. It was a hard choice, but Naruto had made his decision. 1 year later, Suiton, Daibakufu no Jutsu, cried out Naruto as he stood atop of a lake, using his chakra to stand on the surface of the water. The jutsu extended a large amount of water over a large scale. The water surged and rised up to several dozen meters high. Then it streamed down to the ground in one big cascade, much like a gigantic waterfall. The jutsu resembled a huge wave, with tremendous power that can hollow out the ground. What remains after that technique's utilization is reminiscent of no less than the aftermath of a natural disaster. The water created a huge crater in the ground and emptied the lake by about a fourth of its original volume. The Senju jumped into the air using his chakra to propel him from the water surface, and he was hovering 50 feet in the air. Naruto unsealed a blade that he sealed into his wrist and held it securely in his hands. It was a Nodaichi, with the blade being 4 feet long. It was heavier and more durable than a normal katana, so it has a superior range and cutting capabilities. Naruto had taken to using a blade since he stopped training with Tsunade in taijutsu. Since his routine had changed from taijutsu to fuinjutsu, his body was not getting as much exercise as he was used to, so in his free time Naruto had begun to train himself in using kenjutsu. His mother had a scroll of the Nidaime Hokage's kenjutsu techniques, and Naruto was very excited to learn it. It was difficult at first, since his great-granduncle's style focused more on longer blades, such as the Raijin, a blade that could extend to great length if enough chakra was channeled through it. Naruto did not have a Raijin or right-un chakra, so he decided to shift the element to futon chakra. The Senju had learnt the Hien no Jutsu, so he could channel his wind chakra into his blade to extend its range and increase its cutting power. Naruto had to increase his speed a lot in order to be able to use the Nidaime style effectively, so he had his father draw some weighted seals on his body to make his body heavier over time. Futon, Kazakiri no Jutsu, cried Naruto as he slashed his blade across the space in front of him, and caused an invisible blade of wind to whip from his Nodaichi, and slice through a large tree trunk. The Kazakiri no Jutsu was usually used by a battle fan user, but Naruto used his mother's taijutsu techniques and incorporated them into his kenjutsu. By pour a heavy amount of wind chakra into his blade before he strikes, and releasing it all at once as he slashes, Naruto will effectively launch an amplified version of the Kazakiri no Jutsu. Naruto slashed his blade around a few more times, and consecutively launched a few more blade of wind at the tree in front of him. The destructive blade sliced through the wooden trunk with ease and even went on to destroy a few more trees behind it. The Senju boy landed on one of the tree horizontally, and used its trunk as a springboard to launch himself down towards the ground. Naruto channeled an immense amount of chakra into his blade, and the Nodaichi was beginning to glow a powerful blue. Getsuga Tensho! Cried Naruto as he slashed his blade into the ground and released his chakra at the same time. A large crescent wave of chakra pierced the earth and ripped the ground in half. The wave of pure chakra was seemingly unstoppable as it tore through the lake as it finished its path on the ground. It was until it crashed into the other side of the shore that the attack subsided. Do you really have to destroy the training field so much, Naruto? Asked a voice from behind the Senju boy. Naruto smiled at his father's voice and turned around to greet him. Good morning, Tuchan, just warming up for training. Jiraiya smiled back and walked up to his son. He ruffled the boy's hair and patted his shoulder. Your kenjutsu is really getting good. No many people can pull off what you do with wind chakra, said the man as he looked around and saw the destructive power of Naruto's Kazakiri no Jutsu. But your Getsuga Tensho technique, that is just amazing. If your Ka-chan knew that her taijutsu incorporated with kenjutsu would have that kind of effect, she would have taken to using a blade a long time ago. The boy smiled and nodded. Thanks, Tuchan, beamed the boy happily. The sanin chuckled before he and his son walked to the center of the field. So, did you make any progress on the jutsu you were trying to create? Naruto had surprised his parents and great-grandmother, saying that he was trying to create his own ninjutsu. Creating an original jutsu should be very difficult for a normal jounin, but if they believed that Naruto would manage to surprise them. Kushina had been very excited to hear that Naruto was making up his own jutsu. She even made him promise her that he will teach it to her when he was finished. The Senju boy smiled and nodded. I have been steadily making progress, and I predict that I will be finished with it soon. Jiraiya smiled proudly at his son. He had no idea what kind of jutsu Naruto was trying to create, as the boy wanted it to be a surprise, but no matter what it was, creating an original jutsu at the age of 8 was nothing short of magnificent. Naruto smiled at his father. So Tuchan, what are you going to teach me today? The sanin smiled widened. That's the thing, Naruto. I came to tell you that we will skip training for today. Your mother and I have to some news for the whole family. The Senju boy was curious. Wow, sounds important. Jiraiya chuckled and nodded. Yes, it is important, said the man as he grasped onto his son's shoulder and used the Shunshin no Jutsu to travel back to the house faster. When Naruto and Jiraiya arrived in the main living room, Tsunade, Mito and Kushina were already sitting along the couches in the room. Tsunade had a smile on her face as she saw her husband and son, and gestured Jiraiya sit next to her. Naruto walked over to Kushina and his bachan and sat right next to the younger Uzumaki girl. Kushina smiled when Naruto sat down beside her and scooted closer to him until their shoulders were touching. Do you have any idea what this is about? Whispered Kushina softly to Naruto. The Senju boy shook his head. I have no idea, but it must be important seeing that we are skipping training to hear this, analyzed Naruto, as he thought the whole situation through. Tsunade smiled brightly at the two kids as she stood up and walked over to them. Jiraiya and Mito already have small grins on their faces. Naruto looked over at Kushina and saw that she was looking at him too. Both of them were clueless about what they were about to be told. Naruto assumed that it was some good news seeing how happy everyone seemed to be. But he could not assume anything, he had absolutely no idea what was going on. Tsunade placed a hand on both her son's and daughter's shoulders as she knelt down in front of them. "You two must be wondering what we are going to tell you, right?" asked the woman gleefully as she looked at her children lovingly. Kushina nodded and tilted her head to the side a little. "Yeah, what's going on, Kachan?" Jiraiya got up and walked over to his wife and children. He knelt down next to Tsunade and held her hand. "We have some very good news, and I have a feeling that you both are going to be very happy," said the white-haired man, adding to the insufferable suspense that was filling the two children's minds. Tsunade clapped her hands together. "You both are going to have a younger brother or sister," exclaimed the female sanin as Jiraiya and Mito smiled happily. Both Naruto and Kushina were silent and emotionless for a few seconds, and the latter was the one to react first. A smile began to sneak onto Kushina's face as her eyes widened. Kushina brought her hands up to cover her mouth before she jumped off of the couch and stomped on the ground. "You mean I'm going to be a big sister?" cried the aesthetic girl as she smiled at her parents. Kushina was a few months older than Naruto, but the Senju heir had always been the older sibling out of them because he was usually the one that takes cares of Kushina and acts like an older brother. Kushina had always whined to her mother that Naruto was treating her like a baby girl, but in a few months she would officially be an older sister, something she was very happy of being. Jiraiya and Tsunade both laughed happily at their daughter's reaction and quickly nodded their head. "Yes, Kushi-chan, you are going to be in Wani-chan," said the kind mother as she pulled her little girl into a tight hug. She was happier than she had ever been. The two Sannin had been trying for another child for a while already. They were hesitant at first because their second child may be in danger like Naruto, but they were willing to risk it. Tsunade had once again claimed that her child was going to be a beautiful white-haired girl with brown eyes. Naruto felt his heart soar at the news. It was indeed something worth celebrating. "I'm going to be a brother again?" muttered the boy to himself before a giant smile appeared on his face. Naruto ran to his parents and jumped to hug his father. "Yada!" cried the young boy, actually acting his age instead of acting like a chunin. Jiraiya chuckled and lifted his son over his shoulders. "You are going to be another Oni-chan, Naruto." Mito stood up and smiled at her granddaughter. "I am so happy for you, Tsu-chan," said the elderly woman as she hugged her beloved little girl who was going to be a mother of three soon. Tsunade smiled brightly than she had ever had and returned her grandmother's hug. "Thank you, Ba-chan!" exclaimed the woman before she pulled back from the hug and looked at Mito. "Hey Ba-chan, we decided that if the baby is a girl, we will name her after you," announced the Sannin as her husband nodded at her words. Mito felt her own tears sting her eyes as she nodded. "Okay, thank you, Tsu-chan," Jiraiya-chan whispered the Uzumaki and Senju leader as she hugged her family close to her. She was very happy that she would be able to see her third great-grandchild before she passed away. 3 months later, Naruto was once again training as hard as he could inside the main training field of his home, and the area around him were largely destroyed and battered. Craters of many sizes decorated the ground along with man-toppled trees that looked to be grinded into pieces. The Senju heir himself was panting and out of breath at the center of the field. He was really tired and his vast chakra reserves were almost depleted. Naruto had been training for over 5 hours non-stop. He was very close from completing his first original jutsu, and he didn't want to stop. The Senju heir had gotten even more motivated in training ever since he found out that he was going to have another brother or sister. His parents had told him a few months ago about his danger in Konoha and the threats posed by all the other shinobi villages because of the fact that he was the Senju heir. Naruto himself was not very intimidated because he was isolated and was training himself to defend himself from his enemies. But the boy became worried for his younger siblings. Kushina and the baby who will soon be born will be in the same situation as him, and Naruto was not about to let his precious people be harmed by others. Mito had told Naruto many stories about the Shodai Hokage, and the boy had come to idolize the legendary man who was also his great-grandfather. Hashirama had 2 brothers. One was a very infamous shinobi that became the Nidaime Hokage, but the youngest brother actually died when he was just a little boy. It was dark times, and even children at very young ages were sent out to fight in the many battles that occurred between clans. The Senju clan was a particularly popular clan at the time as well. Before the reign of Senju Hashirama, the Senju clan was already known as one of the most powerful clan, but the casualties were also over the top. The Shodai Hokage promised himself and his clansmen that he will one day bring stability to the clan, and form an alliance with their worst enemy, and he had succeeded by founding Konoha no Sato along with the Uchiha clan. Naruto promised himself that just like his ancestor, he will also put his life on the line for his family and precious people, and that was why he was training so hard. The Senju glared down at his own hand and saw the chakra burns that covered the majority of his palm. "It is still not good enough," cursed Naruto as he gripped his fists and stomped the ground. "I need to push the power and rotation to its maximum." Naruto sighed and decided that he was overstressing himself, and should just take a small break. The boy walked over to an unbroken tree and jumped up to rest of its branch. Naruto was really tired, but he was so close to finishing his jutsu it would be a shame to stop. The Senju channeled his chakra throughout his body to try to soothe his circulatory system and calm his body. The boy brought his hand up to his face and channeled chakra into it as well. A green glow emanated from his palm and it slowly healed the burns on his hand. It was painful even when Naruto was healing his burns, so he absent-mindedly placed his other hand on the tree trunk and channeled some chakra to the tree as well. The boy shut his eyes closed as he tried his best to ignore the burning pain on his hand, and after 5 excruciating pain, he opened his eyes with a sigh of relief. But the first thing he noticed when he regained his vision was that there was a weird-looking fruit hanging of one of the branches of the tree. Naruto had never seen such a fruit before, not even in the herbal textbook his mother ordered him to read. It was as big as an apple, but it was completely round, and it glowed a soft blue. There seemed to have some sort of energy swirling inside it, and it looked very soft. Naruto looked around and found that there was only one fruit on the entire tree, and that the tree suddenly looked a lot healthier than it was just a few minutes ago. "That thing looks really good," muttered Naruto as he reached out and plucked the weird-looking fruit from the tree. He brought it close to his nose and gave it a sniff, and it smelled heavenly. It was unlike anything he had smelled before. It may have been a bad idea, but Naruto's curiosity won out his sense of caution, and he took a bite out of the fruit. Naruto's eyes widened as soon as the juices touched his tongue. It was the most amazing taste he had ever tasted in his entire life. It was sweet and refreshing, and the effects it had on his mouth and throat was like that of a mint leaf. "Oishi," whispered Naruto as he looked down at the fruit. He saw that in the innards of the fruit was also a faint glowing blue that reminded him of chakra, and surprisingly, there was no seed in the middle. How did this thing grow if there was no seed on the branch? Wondered Naruto before he took another bite out of the amazing fruit, and before long he had finished the entire thing. "Man, that was the most amazing food I have ever tasted. If I find any more I should bring some back for Kushi-chan to try." The Senju heir decided that he had rested enough, and jumped down from the branch and onto the ground, but he felt something weird. After resting for a few minutes, and some light healing wouldn't have replenished his chakra very much, but he could feel that his chakra reserves were almost full, and his chakra felt like it was even more dense than usual. Could it be that fruit replenished my chakra?" asked the boy to himself, thinking back to the fruit that he just ate. He looked back at the tree and it was clearly the most healthy out of all the others around it. It was the only tree that had a full canopy and had green leaves. Its bark was thick and brown, and looked very healthy. Naruto shook his head and decided to focus on his task at hand. He once again focused his chakra and released it through his palm. Using his chakra control, Naruto made his chakra rotate in his hand in all directions, forming a small storm of chakra in the shape of a circle. Naruto gritted his teeth and forced more chakra into his jutsu as he maintained the form of the circle, and the chakra was spinning faster and faster and became denser and denser as he poured chakra into it. The Senju could see that the jutsu was stabilizing. It was becoming easier and easier to maintain its form because once it reached a certain stage, the jutsu should be self-sustainable. Naruto gritted his teeth and gave one final push of chakra into his jutsu, and it was complete. A dense ball of chakra was held in Naruto's hand, and it was magnificent. The jutsu itself gave off a blue glow of chakra, and despite its violent creation, it was oddly silent. Naruto smirked and bent his knees. He focused his chakra and jumped up high into air. He pulled his hand back as he reached the peak of his height, and sent a burst of chakra through his feet so he would den faster. As the ground became closer and closer to Naruto, he pushed his hand forward, aiming his new jutsu at the ground. The last few split seconds of his den, Naruto thrusted his arm fully out, and the jutsu crashed into the ground. Rasengan! The effects were instantaneous. The impact point was immediately ground to shreds and the earth around it were torn apart. All Naruto could hear was his chakra grinding against the torched earth of the ground, and he could feel that he was shredding the earth like a hot knife through butter. The Rasengan was not giving way to the obstacles in its way and maintained its shape as it was forced into the ground. The very foundation of the earth around Naruto was shaking and cracking because of the sheer power of the Rasengan. Naruto smirked at the raw power of his jutsu and sent one last push to it, and forced it out of shape. A huge explosion of chakra blasted its way downwards into the ground. Naruto had designed the jutsu to rotate so he could control the explosion direction once he decides to finish the jutsu. A dome of burning chakra emerged from the ground, and Naruto was seen pressing against the top of the dome with his hand. He was still pushing it down. It took another 30 seconds for the chakra to disperse, and when it did it revealed a crater that was at least 15 feet wide and 10 feet deep. Naruto landed on the side of the crater with a smile on his face. He had finally done it. After a whole year of work he had finally completed his original jutsu. Looking over to the edge of the training field, Naruto saw his whole family staring at him with widened eyes and gaping jaws. Jiraiya and Tsunade was watching Kushina train with Mito in Fuinjutsu, and they suddenly felt a surge of chakra from the training field, so they quickly used Shunshin to travel over to see what was happening. The whole Senju Uzumaki family saw the devastation of Naruto's jutsu, and was utterly shocked, They couldn't believe that a boy no older than 9 would be able to create a jutsu that could be labeled an A-rank jutsu in Konoha. Naruto grinned at his family before he jumped into the air and stretched his arms out. "Yada!" cried the boy. "I did it!" Back in the sidelines, Kushina was looking at Hijutsu with stars in her eyes. She could wait for Naruto to teach her that jutsu. But for the adults and senior, they were all much more serious. They were a little dubious at first about Naruto creating his own jutsu, but after witnessing what he was able to create by himself, they no longer doubted anything from the boy. Instead, they believed that Naruto will be able to surpass the both of them in prowess as a shinobi, and might be able to reach the level of the Shodai Hokage. It had been 8 months since Tsunade and Jiraiya had told their family about the child they were expecting, and it was finally time to welcome the newest member of the Senju family into the world. Jiraiya was just as nervous as he was the previous time when Naruto was born, but luckily for Tsunade, Kushina was skilled enough to monitor her condition without the help of the white-haired sanin. Tsunade had determined a few weeks ago that her second child was going to be a girl, something she was very happy about, and Jiraiya had joked about that his wife finally won a bet in her life. Mito was also very happy because the child was going to be named after her. She was glad that she would see another member of the Senju family be born before her death. Naruto was watching his father pace along the hallway outside of the medical room that Tsunade was giving birth in. Mito and Kushina were inside the room aiding the female sanin give birth to the newest member of their family. The elderly Uzumaki was holding Tsunade's hand as she grunted in pain due to her contractions, and Kushina was busy monitoring her mother's physical situation, making sure that she doesn't overexert herself. "Two-chan, you really have to relax," muttered Naruto with his eyebrow twitching. "You are making me even more nervous." The white-haired sanin had been the most nervous out of everyone in the family since the previous week. He was constantly paranoid at Tsunade's movements, and even tried to escape to sleep in a different room from his wife just in case he accidentally bumps into her during the night, but Tsunade had talked him down. Kushina and Naruto were very amused by their father's nervousness, as it was odd to see their usually funny and loving father act so cowardly. Jiraiya scratched his head as he leaned against the wall next to his son. "Is it supposed to take this long?" asked the father of 3 as he shuffled his feet along the ground. "I remember it being faster." The Senju heir was also nervous. From what he had heard from Kushina, their mother was rather middle-aged to be having children, so there would be an increased risk to her delivery. Naruto would be scared if his mother was a normal woman, but she was one of the legendary sanin and was the most advanced and skilled medical ninja in the world, so he was sure she will be fine. Naruto smiled at the thought of having another sister. He couldn't wait to meet the little baby girl. It would be different from Kushina. She would be much younger than them. Kushina was more like a best friend than a sister to Naruto, and he knew that she was strong and that he wouldn't have to always protect her like a child. Either way, he would still protect his precious Kushi-chan as hard as he could, but it would still be different with his youngest sister. Naruto will be 9 years older than his little sister, and he will make sure that she will not go through any sort of dangers that threatens her because of the fact that she was the daughter of 2 sanin and was one of the heiresses of the Senju clan. The father and son fell into an uncomfortable silence as they wait for the door to open, but one sound broke them out of their stupor and put large smiles on their face. It was the cries of the baby girl. The door of the room burst open and Kushina came out smiling at her father and brother. "Mito-chan is born," cried the girl happily as she clapped her hands together. "She is a healthy 8 pounds girl," finished Kushina as she jumped into Naruto's arms and let the young man spin her around celebrating. Jiraiya rushed into the room and saw his wife and Mito cradling a crying baby girl close to them, and the male sanin felt his eyes water a little at the sight. He loved all his children equally, and he finally had another daughter who he can shower his love with. He walked over to his smiling wife and held onto her hand. "Thank you, Tsunade-chan, I love you," said the man as he leaned down to kiss the soft lips of his wife and hug her close to him. Tsunade tightened her grip on Jiraiya's hand and smiled at him. "Hey, this is our second daughter," whispered the woman as she lifted her baby and showed her to husband. "Senju Mito." Jiraiya reached for his youngest daughter with steady hands and cradled her to his chest. The girl stopped crying when she saw her father smile down at her and began to drift off into a light nap. From the few seconds that Jiraiya made contact with his daughter, he saw that she had light brown eyes that was like her mother's, and was beginning to show a very light shade of hair that was eventually going to be white like his own. Jiraiya looked back and smiled at his 2 other children. "Hey Naruto," Kushina said the man as he walked over to them smiling. "This is your little sister Mito-chan." Kushina was smiling as bright as the sun as she looked down at the precious child. She was so beautiful Kushina fell in love with the little bundle instantly. The red-haired girl rubbed her finger lightly against the soft cheek of her baby sister, and giggled when the baby's eyes opened after her touch. "Hey Mito-chan, I am your Wani-chan." Little Mito looked at Kushina with her large brown eyes and let out a small giggle. Her little arms reached up and she wrapped her budgie finger around Kushina's own. "Aw, you are just adorable Mito-chan." Naruto smiled at his father. "Hey Two-chan, can I hold her?" Jiraiya smiled back and nodded. "Of course Naruto," said the man as he passed his new daughter to his son. The Senju heir accepted his little sister into his arms for the first time, and cradled her to his chest. The baby was a healthy 8-pound girl, but she was still a small child that Naruto fell in love with right away. The innocent eyes of the small girl stared into her older brother's own, and a little giggle escaped Mito's lips. The two were full-blooded brother and sister, but their features were quite different. Naruto's blonde hair and blue eyes were in great contrast to the little girl's white hair and brown eyes, but they both possessed some of their parents' traits. "Hey Mito-chan, I'm your Onii-chan," said the young man lightly as Kushina walked up next to him and smiled down at the girl. "You are really cute," Mito-chan slurred out Naruto in a childish manner that made both his sisters giggle at him. The young man tickled the baby's face with his finger, and the babe reached for his finger just like she did with Kushina, and she had quite a firm grip for such a small child. Kushina nudged Naruto and held her hands out. "Let me hold her, Naruto-kun," said the young lady as she reached out to hold her baby sister. Naruto smiled and handed a small bundle to Kushina, and smiled when he saw the twinkle in her eyes. "Oh," cooed Kushina as she held Mito close to her face. "You are so cute, Mito-chan," squealed the red-haired girl happily with a huge smile on her face. The Senju heir was delighted by the sight of Kushina and the baby. He thought Kushina looked more beautiful than he had ever seen her. Naruto walked behind Kushina and looked down at the baby over her shoulder. He started to wave his hands beside his ears and made silly faces at the baby girl to make her laugh, and all the while Kushina was giggling along at the cute interactions between Naruto and the baby. Kushina absent-mindedly leaned back against Naruto, so her side was resting against his chest. She looked up at him and smiled while she held the baby, and at that moment, Tsunade, Jiraiya and Mito were all looking at them. It was surprising for the three-seasoned ninja to see the scene of Kushina and Naruto holding the baby together. For a second it was like they were the real family. Naruto and Kushina were the parents and little Mito was their little daughter. It was weird for the parents to see their children appear to be a couple, but both Jiraiya and Tsunade thought that Naruto and Kushina looked perfect together at that moment, and it made them think that there might be a possibility in the future. Mito had always wanted Naruto and Kushina to eventually become a couple, but that idea had dimmed for the last few years. They were still children, and even if they were to eventually get together, it will be when they were in their mid-teen years, so Mito decided to leave the thought be and focus on their growth. But seeing them together with little Mito-chan like a family made her think of her hopes again. It was poetic to think that the last surviving members of the Senju and Uzumaki clans will become lovers. Mito, for one, would be very happy if that was to become reality. Tsunade sat up from her bed and leaned her body against her husband as she continued to watch Naruto and Kushina play with the baby. "They look so great together," said the mother ambiguously, referring to them as three siblings or just as Naruto and Kushina at the same time. "So cute." Jiraiya didn't really know what to think. The thought of Naruto and Kushina eventually becoming lovers was kind of weird for him, because he saw them as his son and daughter. There was no blood relations between them, so it should be fine, but he would still have to wrap his mind around that idea. Jiraiya had always noticed that Naruto and Kushina were oddly close to each other as siblings, even at their really young ages. Recalling back his memory to the time during the Third Ninja World War, not even Konan and Yahiko were as close as Kushina and Naruto, and that is saying something. "Yeah," whispered the man softly as he continued with his thoughts. Mito looked over at the pair of sanin and smiled at them. "I know what the two of you are thinking," whispered the elderly woman softly so the children wouldn't hear her. "I agree with you too. It may seem odd that a pair of children that grew up together as siblings might eventually become romantic with each other, but when I look at Naruto-chan and Kushina-chan I see that they would be perfect for each other," said Mito as she gazed upon the lovely sight of Naruto and Kushina. Tsunade and Jiraiya looked over at their elder in surprise. "Ba-chan?" whispered Tsunade. Mito smiled and nodded. "Just look at them," said the Uzumaki leader, as she looked over at the pair of happy children. "They clearly love each other already. I don't know if it is still love between siblings, but I am confident that it will eventually turn into romantic love." The pair of sanin looked over at Naruto and Kushina, who were still playing with the baby. Little Mito-chan was still the center of attention, but Naruto and Kushina will always unconsciously look at each other, as if to see whether or not they were still attracting each other's attention. Kushina seemed like she was trying to look Mito look as cute as possible, as if she was trying to show Naruto how beautiful she looked herself as well, and Naruto was doing the same thing to Kushina, only that he was trying to make Mito-chan giggle as happily as possible. Mito sighed and sat down on the edge of the bed. "They remind me so much of Hashirama-kun and myself." The two adults and one senior continued to watch the two kids play with the baby, while they were all imagining what it would be like if Naruto and Kushina were to get married in the future. Tsunade smiled at the thought of the adorable grandchildren she will be getting, and could already see little red-haired boys and blonde-haired girls running around the Senju compound back in Konoha. Jiraiya held a small smile as he looked over at Naruto and Kushina. He would be fine if the two was to eventually be together. As long as they love each other, there is nothing that he would not allow them to do if it is what they want. Kushina was not an adopted daughter in the family. She was loved and treated like their flesh and blood, and Jiraiya would not trust any man to take care of his little girl besides Naruto.